Welcome, adventurers! You've made it to the Wind Down, the live stream at the end of the Geekverse. It's a chill place to hang out here as the sun sets on another day. We're here to have a little chat, reflect on the day's successes, and prepare for a better tomorrow. So settle in with your favorite beverage this evening.
May I tempt you with a cup of chamomile?
Why, thank you, Dory. I would love a mug of tea this evening. But perhaps you would rather have some coffee, though I do recommend decaf this late in the evening. Or perhaps maybe a cold brew is more your style.
Oh, no thank you, Dory. A little red wine. For me, I think.
Sounds like an excellent choice, Gandalf. Whatever you want, it's yours. Could I offer you a bourbon, a martini, an old-fashioned, or something perhaps a little stronger? Ugh, well, I mean, if that's really your thing, then okay, but I hope we can find something a bit better than that.
Romulan ale? Why, Bones, you know this is illegal.
I only use it for medicinal purposes.
All right, now we're talking. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Welcome to my home. Come one, come all. Writers, artists, sculptors, storytellers, board gamers, streamers, dungeon masters, fans of sci-fi, fantasy, geeks of all kinds. Whatever your fandom, you have a place here. For soon it will be time for another long rest so that we can recover our hit points, our spells, and our abilities, so we'll be ready to fight on for another day tomorrow. But first, we all need a little time to reflect. Because you've survived another long, perilous day of wilderness treks, dungeoneering, and random encounters. And that's worth celebrating. Let's tell the tale. It's time for the Wind Down. It will improve your life. It really will. Give it a chance. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Wind Down this evening. I was not expecting this, but with all the craziness with the D&D OGL situation going on, we needed to talk more about this because there's been a whole lot of news that's been going on in the past 24 hours, and I thought that we really needed to be able to reflect and kind of rationally think about everything that's happened since this crisis started a week ago, even though it feels like it's been, a year ago, and especially over the past 24 hours. And we have a very special guest here tonight, two very special guests, but the very, very special guest is Ryan Dancey. He has agreed to be here today, and I really appreciate this. And then as well, we have Mark Tassin, who you have seen on the channel before and whose products we have talked about on the channel before as well. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I see everybody in the chat. We're going to also take as many different questions as we can. If the chat starts blowing up, we may not be able to get to everybody. We've got a lot of topics that I want to get to because I want to kind of work through systematically the process of the last 24 hours, what's happened. But we will get to everybody we also can while we're talking about all this. So thank you, everyone. Ryan, thank you for being here.
Yeah, really happy to be here.
Mark, thank you so much for being here as well.
I'm happy to be here. I'm sure I'll have as many questions as everyone else. So,
right. So, Ryan, do you want to explain to everyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do so that everyone knows? Lots of people probably all of a sudden know. You become one of the most famous people in tabletop gaming all of a sudden, right?
Thank you. That's nice of you to say. So I am the chief operating officer of a tabletop game publishing company named Alderac Entertainment, which you may better know as AEG. 23 years ago, I was the vice president of tabletop role-playing games and the Dungeons & Dragons brand manager at Wizards of the Coast. And my team was responsible for the publication of the third edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And I was the architect of the Open Gaming License and the D20 System Trademark License that created the Open Gaming Commons that we have today.
Okay, and so that's going to get us exactly where we are here. So he was at ground zero. He is ground zero. His brain is ground zero of this entire operation here. Mark, do you want to introduce yourself and let everybody know what's going on?
Well, I think I'm sort of a perfect example of the folks who benefited from the work that, Ryan and company did. I mean, the reality is that because of the open game license, we were able to publish our World of Ataltis campaign setting. We were able to finally get it out there and make a dream come true. And it's been pretty fantastic over the last year to be building a business based on this. And it was a great opportunity. I've done other things over the years. I've written for Shadowrun and Dragon Magazine, and I used to run the Gen Con Writer Symposium for folks who have ever been out to that. But currently, Mechanical Muse is my big company. And one of the things that we're doing now is that based on the potential changes, we're starting an effort with a bunch of consulting designers, folks who have made names for themselves over the years, to start a new game system. Just because at this point, we've lost confidence in our ability to move forward with the SRD. But yeah, that's where we're at. And I think that, yeah, I'm sort of the example of the sort of folks who are being impacted pretty heavily by these changes.
And that's why I've been so heavily involved in this, so much as I have, even though this is a small voice here on this channel. It impacts so many, and it does impact me, but it also impacts a lot of my friends as well, like Mark, like Lou, like Brian, like David, who have all published under the license, the OGL, and now thought, what is happening here? So that's been really important. I'll say I put the Ravenkeep Discord server link in the description. I'm going to post it into the chat right here. I have up the Discord server, and I'm on the D&D channel. So if there's some kind of link that you need to send to me or something like that, you can also reach me through the Ravenkeep Discord server in the D&D channel. That's the one I'll be looking at while this is going on. And I see lots of people here. Vision says hello to people, and don't forget to hit the like button. Yes, please hit the like button, and also please share this out so that everybody knows that's going on. So yes, please do. That would be great. Okay, I want to take just a second to do something. So what I think we would do, we're going to organize this topic and organize this discussion based in the following way. We're going to recap what has happened from the beginning, because I have had so many friends say, what is going on with Dungeons and Dragons? So if you don't know, but very quickly, I want to go through that very quickly, but I want it to be there. So we say, here's the situation, why we're here. And then really the meat of this is going to be what has happened in the last 24 hours and what is its impact and what does it mean, and go through all of that. So that's how we're going to organize this discussion. I did not get to put out a video. I was trying to put out a video today on my opinion here on the Wizards statement. I was trying to put that out today. I didn't. In preparation for this, I didn't get to. I was actually live online this morning teaching how to play Pathfinder. When Wizards dropped, we were on a Pathfinder live stream when we had to break for breaking news. Let me be able to share my screen here. So I did just tweet it out though, because after I got time to think about what the Wizards release was, and I think that a lot of people here will have the same kind of opinion, but my opinion was as follows. So I put this out. I said that the statement from Wizards of the Coast is unacceptable. They must acknowledge they have no ability to revoke or deauthorize the OGL 1.0 in any way. In solidarity with OpenD, I did post a dramatic reading of Paizo's statement, because I think Paizo got it right there. Like Paizo's statement, which we'll look at, regarding the status of the OGL, I think was right. So that's where I'm standing. Is that where you guys are basically standing as well?
Yeah, that's what I want. I want them to make a public statement that they don't have the right to deauthorize or revoke that license.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I kind of want to see it in writing, because they said a lot of things so far. And unfortunately, under Four Corners law, if there's any question about what the legal right is, it's got to be written down on that piece of paper. So as a creator, I feel like I need to actually see something on paper in order for me to feel totally comfortable on going back to the way things were.
Okay. All right. So that's why I did see some things go by on my social media feed that was like, has Wizard of the Coast surrendered? And I think that's a no. That's a no. They have not surrendered on this issue. And that's to me, the only critical issue. That's the critical issue, and that's the essential issue.
I think the important thing right now is that they are moving. They have significantly changed their stance from the draft open gaming license they showed to third-party publishers in the third week of December, to the original post they made saying that there were going to be changes, to the post they made today. They have continued to move in the right direction. They are moving.
Directionality is important. Yeah, when you're moving in a direction or in the right direction, people do respond to that, but we shouldn't let up. That should be the goal, I think.
That's right. What we're doing is working. That's, people say, oh, it's not going to work. It is working.
Yeah, and I feel like, from my perspective, even though this may end up in the courts, the reality is that this is a more effective way for us to create change. Because honestly, us going versus Hasbro is going to be a fight that not only could take years, but could be one that most of us don't have the money for, right? I mean, that's a very difficult option to put on the table, the way I see it.
Okay. All right. So that's the goal. So that's why we're here, and we're not like, oh, it's over. They released some kind of statement or something like that. Because on my stream, when we were looking at that, everybody on my live stream did not accept what Wizards put out. And we're going to look at what Wizards put out. But okay, so why are we here, and what's happening in D&D? I'm going to try to do this in extremely short measure, and then Ryan, you can fill in what is important that I miss.
Sure.
Okay. Dungeons and Dragons was at one time owned, the role-playing game was at one time owned by TSR. It became extremely popular, but from a business perspective, they failed. TSR was bought by Wizards of the Coast, which published Magic the Gathering at the time. Ryan was actually put in charge of finding out why, what the situation was with TSR, why it was failing, and how to make it profitable once again. There is a peculiarity regarding U.S. copyright law, which we will get into later, which says that game mechanics cannot be copyrighted, but the expressions of those mechanics can. And so now, in no small part, is a business decision on Ryan's part to increase the popularity and profitability of Dungeons & Dragons. One of these ideas was to, well, since the mechanics can't technically be copyrighted according to U.S. copyright law, according to the current understanding, we could also put out an expression of those rules, the SRD, and allow people to use that expression of those rules under the Open Gaming License, the OGL. So this was a revolution in tabletop gaming and the tabletop gaming industry writ large, when all of a sudden everyone had access to the rules, not the trademark, not the IP Dungeons and Dragons, but the core mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons, which would allow everyone to be able to write for those rule sets. This created This created an explosion in tabletop game publishing. Mark does this. I have published one thing under the OGL, but I was planning on publishing other things. But lots of people have done things like what Mark has done. I should have that over here, but here's the World of Ataltis Player's Guide, which allows Mark to come up with his world, write all of his monsters, all of his spells, and everything like that in accordance with the Dungeons and Dragons rules. So if you would like to play an Ataltis, you can. So many people do this. Lou does this with Thrones and Bones. Mm-hmm. All of his stuff is written up in here. We say that this is compatible with the 5th edition, because you can't say Dungeons and Dragons, but all this stuff is compatible with 5th edition. This created an explosion of content. And now, as of last Thursday night, I believe it was, there was a leak that Wizards of the Coast was going to attempt to deauthorize this license, which was indeed perpetual and a gift to the gaming community that allowed all of this to happen. And this has put everyone who has published books, like all of my friends and so many other people in the industry, scrambling to wonder what was going on. Is this true? Because, that was my initial question. I was like, wait a minute. When I saw that on Thursday, I was like, what is going on? My initial response was, no, you can't un-OGL. You can't take that back. You can't un-OGL. That was the phraseology that came to my mind, which had been in my mind for a long time. And so a lot of people, when this document, because there's going to be a new release of Dungeons and Dragons called 1D&D, and so they appear to be trying to change licensing and whatever in preparation of 1D&D. Also, they're bringing out a movie and a TV show, and they're really trying to push the Dungeons and Dragons brand in the mass market. So that's probably why all of this is going on. But all of a sudden, for about 72 hours, starting from last Thursday, there was all of a sudden a lot of controversy around what exactly the status of the OGL was. And we were wondering, and I was wondering, is there some kind of flaw in the OGL that no one has ever noticed for 22 years, either intentionally or unintentionally? And so we went through this this large period of kind of ambiguity in the community for like 72 hours or something like that because of the leak and then all of this stuff. So there was the period of ambiguity. Then there was starting to get moments of clarity with the interview with Ryan Dancey on the Roll for Combat channel, which I thought was incredible, and people should watch that for so many reasons, which in my mind alleviated the idea that there was or actually solidified in my mind that the OGL, the intent of the OGL when Ryan wrote it or crafted it, it was written by Brian the legal Brian Lewis, yes. So in conjunction with the lawyer, that the intent of the OGL was what we always thought it was. And then we also went through a dissertation by Bob Tarantino, who wrote on the OGL. And in my mind, that also solidified that not only was the intent what we always thought it was, but also that it is what we think it is, that it actually is indeed what we think it is. And Ryan has also confirmed that. But the intent, and those two things I thought were very important. And now the community is kind of rallied to figure out what do we do with that. And that kind of sits at our situation. Ryan, what would you add to that about our situation as we stand?
I mean, I think the most important thing to know is that Wizards of the Coast has operated with the Open Gaming License for 22 years successfully. The value of the Dungeons & Dragons brand has consistently grown over that time, and it is now massively larger than it was when I was involved in the project in 2000. Relatively recently, they issued a system reference document for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons using the Open Gaming License. So it wasn't that long ago that they made a publication under the terms of that license. So nobody in that building today, I believe, has the moral ground to stand on to say that this was all a mistake and that they have erred, or there are errors, or there are abilities that they have which have never been seen before with regards to that license that would allow them to deauthorize it or revoke it. They do not. And I think it's important for the public to understand that 22 years of blood, sweat, tears, money, and reputational time has gone into creating the massive body of work that is all licensed under the exact same license and is therefore completely interoperable. That common shared collection of value is at risk, and it shouldn't be at risk. And it's at risk for in my opinion, bad faith effort on the part of Wizards of the Coast to attempt to deauthorize or revoke that license. They just can't be allowed to do it. It affects people far, far, far beyond the staff and shareholders of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, I think it does. I'm sorry, Mark. I think it does, because when I was looking at this, and also the ramifications on potential things like open source software and things like this goes at the core of what open licenses are.
Yeah, and I just want to, you had said earlier, a gift to the gaming community, but
I wanted to bring that up.
I just want to say, like, one of the first on page 6 of our book, it says, you will need to use this with the 5th edition of the world's best known role-playing game. This means you'll also need the 5th edition starter set, 5th edition core rule books, or access to the 5th edition rules in some fashion to play this game. We're literally sending every single person who picks up our books back to Wizards of the Coast to buy more books from them.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that was the point of the whole project in the first place.
Right. And I mean, so it's not just a gift. And trust me, we're not making money on this. We haven't even broken even after a year, right? So
that's right.
It's
maybe I shouldn't have used that word exactly. I was just referring to the open license. Yeah, but that's why I wanted to be explicit. That's why I was trying to be explicit in what I was saying by saying that this was part of a business strategy. That it wasn't. It was a gift, but it wasn't just complete altruism about what was going on here. This was indeed part of a business strategy to turn the D&D brand into a revenue-generating brand for Wizards of the Coast, and this strategy was phenomenally successful.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
that's right.
Yeah, and to paraphrase the New Republic, I think they put it well when they said that the OGL made the Dungeons and Dragons system, solidified it as the lingua franca of role-playing games. And where before there were other things out there, but it sort of solidified that was it. When you played a role-playing game, this was the language that was common.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to remember that a lot of non-Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games have also been published using the Open Gaming License. There's a lot of branches in the tree, and they are not all derived from Dungeons and Dragons, and that's great because that means that if there are good ideas in those games, they could be incorporated in Dungeons and Dragons or into a game based on Dungeons and Dragons. And if Dungeons and Dragons or a game based on Dungeons and Dragons comes up with a really cool idea, those other game systems are also free to incorporate those good ideas in themselves. So it strengthens everybody to have that shared licensing framework that all of that content is interchangeable and interoperable.
Now might be a good time to bring up this point because I've got questions for Ryan and things like that go through structurally. But since we brought that point up, this seems to fit naturally in here, and that is the point that you brought up that other people are publishing under the OGL. The OGL and the SRD are two separate things.
That's
the
right.
OGL is the license.
That's right.
The SRD, the open license. The SRD is the expression of the Dungeons and Dragons mechanics that is licensed under the SRD.
That's
But
right.
people can also license other things under the SRD.
Anything they wanted to.
Anything they wanted to, right? You can put your mechanics out under the SRD. And
right.
the SRD is also a chain that if you put your mechanic, you build off of the SRD, you build off that and you release what you built under the OGL, somebody else can pick that up and run with it.
Yes, that's right. It employs the concept of a copyleft, which is a legal framework into which I can provide you with rights to a copywritten or copyrighted material that you in turn are bound to and can pass forward. And it requires that any derivative material that you create based on the work covered with that license shares the same licensing terms. So if you use my work to make something, that thing that you made must also be shared with other people under the same terms that you got from me. So it's essentially a fairness mechanism. It ensures that everybody gets the benefit of all of the prior work.
But what does that mean? Because it's out there, Ryan, that has it grown beyond control is a funny word in this point, but grown beyond Wizards itself.
Yes. And that was always the intention. Always. Yes, it has. In a perfect world, every role-playing game on Earth would be licensed with the Open Gaming License. There would be one license and every game would use it. That would be the perfect ideal world. Then every piece of open game content that was published by the people who had the right to make those contributions would be interoperable and interlicensable. And it doesn't have to be about Dungeons and Dragons or any of the other game systems that have been licensed with the Open Gaming License. It's about open game content. It's about the idea that game content should be able to be copied, modified, and distributed with the limitation that you have to give those same rights to everybody that you give that content to.
So based on that, and Bob was talking about that today, Bob Tarantino wrote his dissertation on the subject, was saying, okay, under a hypothetical scenario, could you deauthorize or revoke or something like that? I could pick, you cannot. But like it gets complicated when you think of what would that even mean? Because I can write my own role-playing game.
Yes.
It's a document out there that has nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons at all. I can say it's a document that is out there. And I could put that in the back of my RPG that I wrote completely myself and say it's under the open game content.
Absolutely. You could start a whole new tree in the forest. Yep.
Right. There's a whole bunch of branches that are coming off of the SRD tree, the D&D SRD tree. But there are also all these other trees out there that are growing up because of the SRD.
That's exactly correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So then before we get into what's started happening in the past 24 hours, we do also, I think this is also the perfect time to say then that this is, some people may misunderstand this argument, especially people or lay people who have not been living and breathing the tabletop industry, and especially following this in the past week.
Yeah.
That this is not an argument, just to be clear, about what Wizards of the Coast can do with its property or not do with its property.
That's correct.
Because this has left Wizards of the Coast control.
And Wizards of the Coast has never lost control of its property.
Bingo.
It has always retained sole ownership and control of the brands and the trademarks of Dungeons and Dragons. No part of this ever has impacted their control or ownership of those valuable intellectual properties in any way, which they know.
Right.
Which
Yes.
makes this all the more confusing to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm like sitting here trying to figure out. It's not like it's the how to do an ability check that they're using in the movie. They're using the characters and the
Yes.
monsters and the
That's right.
all of the intellectual property in the movie. That's what's valuable to them.
If they made that movie and it was called something other than Dungeons and Dragons, what is it? Honor Among Thieves, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever, no one would care. No one. Like, it would have to live or die on the strength of the actors and the script and the visuals and all the other things that go into making a movie. People are going to care because it has the words Dungeons and Dragons in front of it. They start with an enormous amount of goodwill and equity that is connected to that brand that has been built up over the, whatever it is, 48 years of the existence of Dungeons and Dragons. And they exclusively own that right. That is their brand equity. The open gaming license has nothing to do with that.
But this is also an assault. We're talking about what's going on here. It's not just what they're doing with their property, but it's what everybody's doing with theirs who is published under this. And the way that this whole community, the whole tabletop industry has been operating for 22, almost 23 years, whatever the 22 years. This is the way we've been operating with a specific understanding. And all of a sudden we're told that, oh no, your understanding is already wrong. It was completely wrong. And that's what we're fighting against. That's not true.
Yeah, I mean, it's even hard to imagine what it would be like if the license could be deauthorized or revoked. How does that even work? Like, there's products sitting on shelves in retail stores today that were published 15 years ago. Are those stores supposed to go and find that inventory and take it out back and burn it? It's impossible. Like, there are companies that don't exist anymore. How will those companies protect or defend their rights, the rights that might be residual to their heirs and assigns and descendants? Like, they can't. Like, it is impossible to imagine any way that you could actually clean up the world of copyrighted material that has been licensed with the open gaming license over the 2 decades the license has been in existence. Like, it can't be done. So if you walk into a court, if you're Wizards of the Coast and you try to make this argument, what is the court going to do? What's the remedy that they're going to suggest? You can't unwrite the world to fix this problem.
I will point out to the chat, please. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. We got 163 people watching. Please do hit the like button and share out that this is going on. It'd be great to get this out into the world. So I'd like to have. It would be great if more people were watching, and then we'll also take some chats here and do some Q&As a little bit later on. Yeah. But okay, so that caught us up. So as far as I was concerned, we went through our period of ambiguity, and then we got cleaned up with that. And then the world, our 3-day period of ambiguity or whatever. So I think we basically start, because I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to take the afternoon off and I got to clean the house and stuff like that. And this was yesterday afternoon. And then we got word yesterday. So I think this is where we should start basically our chronology of what's happened in the past 24 hours. The world was watching for a statement from Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yes.
And nothing materialized.
Yeah, that's right. It was my understanding they planned to make an announcement yesterday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time, and they did not.
And so I thought, so there's nothing to analyze right there.
Right.
But
the analyzation is, if you believe they really did intend to make an announcement and then they didn't, something is working. Like
something might be working.
Yeah.
Right. So when you were on the Roll for Combat interview, there was speculation. We should clearly specify what is speculation and what is not. Yes. So, but I still think that, so I think your speculation is very informed. So what do we think that, if that was the case, what might have happened there? That they saw D&D Beyond subscriptions all of a sudden going?
I mean, I have to believe that there is a group of people inside Wizards of the Coast who are desperately trying to stop this from happening. I believe that in my heart. There are people inside that building who know this is a giant mistake, and they are doing their best to stop it. And they're at risk. Like, anytime you get involved in something like this political inside of a company, you could lose your job over it. And I mean, some of those people have dreamed their whole lives about having the jobs they have now. So they are taking an enormous risk to fight that battle. But I believe that we can see from the outside, from the black box, the battle is being fought. If there was no resistance inside Wizards of the Coast, they would have just moved straightforwardly to doing the announcements that they plan to make a week ago, and they haven't. So there has to be a reason why they're not making those announcements. And I think the reasons are that there are strong objections inside the building, and those objections are being heard.
So I have a question for you, though, Ryan. I'm looking at Hasbro stock.
Yeah.
And it's just going up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like the shareholders are okay with what's happening. And how is that going to impact us? I mean, even if the people inside Wizards care, does Hasbro?
Sure. It's interesting. You know, anytime you want to talk about stock, it's dangerous territory, because what makes a stock move is impossible to determine. If you could determine it, you'd never lose money in the stock market. The last couple of days, the stock has opened at a significant lower value than it closed at. And then as the day has gone on, that value has recovered. So it feels like in the overnight cycle, investors are getting scared. And when the markets open, they sell at a loss. And then as the day goes on, maybe the feeling, the sentiment becomes, well, fundamentally, the value of Hasbro is not changing. And therefore, the people who sold at a reduced price made a mistake. And other shareholders are buying back, the shares at what they perceive as a discount to the true value. I'll also say that the last couple of days have been fantastic for the overall stock market. Thanks. My 401k is happy about that. So there is a rising tide lifts all boats phenomena in stocks, especially large cap stocks. Hasbro is in the Fortune 500. So they're in the S&P, right? So the fact that the whole market is having a rally is helping Hasbro. So I that's a very long-winded way of saying I don't necessarily think you can take Hasbro stock as a proxy for is the company happy or not happy with what's happening with regards to Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay, so we had this non-statement.
It's just not specific in a very good way.
Yeah, right. There was nothing. Well, but we can also think that it took them. I mean, that was a big deal because there had been no official communication. That there had been this leak. There had been a tweet from D&D Beyond's account that said, "Hey, something's coming soon," but there was nothing from them.
I believe, based on my reliance from talking to first-party sources, that Wizards of the Coast has given a bunch of third-party publishers a deadline of today to accept that license. When they began to discuss this change with them in the week before Christmas, today is the day that was the deadline. So not only did they feel a sense of urgency to make an announcement publicly because the public is outraged, but they also have to do something about all the companies that they basically tried to give a hard deadline to and then didn't publish the license. So they kind of had to say something today, whether they wanted to or not. That's my belief. I've been told by people that's true, and I believe it.
Yeah. That's an excellent point, because the deadline for supposedly this taking effect, like when originally, like on Thursday, when somebody heard something, it's going to take effect soon, I had naively thought, like a change that soon would be a year. Like in order to get, publishers to, and then it was like, oh, wait, no, soon you mean like in 3 days or, whatever it was.
Yes.
And that's important to realize as well, that in the draft, the leak that we saw that was leaked on Thursday, like this was all supposed to be happening today. Like this was supposed to be just like turning on a dime.
Yes, that's right. They tried to do shock and awe on the publishers. They really did. They thought they could put the squeeze on them so hard that they would have to capitulate before they had a chance to get organized and resist. And it didn't work.
It's funny that they thought that, because what it really did was made us realize that overnight our books could no longer be sold by the end of the week, as far as we knew, and we're just done.
Look,
right?
There are hundreds. I mean, it's impossible to calculate. I'm just going to say hundreds, and I'm sure that number is correct. It's just low. It may not be high enough. Hundreds of people's livelihoods are directly connected to publishing using the Open Gaming License, and those are real people. They have families and children and houses and dogs and cats. And those are people's lives that are being affected by this. And so if you go to work and you are told either sign this license or your life is destroyed, you will have to think very hard about not signing that license. Very hard. And I have tremendous respect for all of the people who found themselves in the position of having to make that decision on such short notice. And the fact that it appears like almost none of them did says something about not only their commitment to the concept of open game publishing, but also to the strength of their belief that they can get through this and be successful. Like they own their lives, they have agency, and that's an uplifting and positive thing to have seen happen.
Yeah, I think that, and even for folks whose livelihoods don't depend on it, right? I mean, I've got a day job, but I've started in 1999 working on this. And over the past 5 years, I've brought this to life. And I've spent, in addition to the Kickstarter, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars of my own money because I'm investing in a business I'm trying to build over time. And on Thursday night, I was told that we're going to shut you down. Good luck making your money back and rebuilding your product line. I mean, that's a hit. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually spent, it was a hard few days for us. And when you talk about ambiguity, I still feel the only ambiguity I don't have.
They're not done yet. So yeah, you're still feeling it, right?
Yeah. And
I mean,
it's like
two sides of that coin. First side is they haven't actually done anything. That's critical to understand. They haven't done anything. They can stop. They haven't done anything. But other side of the coin is by suggesting they might do something, they have hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, that's it. And it's kind of like if someone walks into the room and says, I'm going to shoot you. And you're like, oh, don't shoot me. And they're like, nah, I'm not going to shoot you after all. But then they stand there with the gun. And you're like, I'm just going to leave because this is not cool anymore, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I like that.
I don't know how they fix this. Honestly, short of an OGL that better secures our rights than the previous one did, more unequivocally, I don't know how they fix this.
The first thing you have to do is they have to make a public statement that they will never attempt to deauthorize or revoke that license. That's the first thing. After we get them to do that, there's lots of things we'll talk about what comes next. But we need to get them to do that first.
But I mean, how would I believe that? Do you
well,
think?
I can imagine lots of ways to make it effectuated, but we don't have to talk about them yet because it doesn't matter. What matters is getting them to be on the record saying they will never attempt to deauthorize or revoke that license.
Yeah.
And then we all should say, and this has been said before, but then they can do whatever they want with a 6th edition or one D&D. Yep. They are welcome to change up the rules, license it under draconian conditions that none of us will ever license under.
Absolutely.
They're welcome to do all of that. But what we want, the flag in the ground, where we're drawing the line, is they have to maintain the 1.0A exactly as it is, which means we get to do everything that we've been doing. All of our books get to stay on the shelves. We get to continue writing our worlds. All of that. That's
that's where we get to right now.
Yes. Okay, and then was about to ask us about thoughts on the Paizo announcement. We're trying to work our way through here chronologically. So that's actually the next thing. So we were the world was waiting on pins and needles for what ended up being no announcement from Wizards of the Coast yesterday. But then the world was like, hang on. We have another announcement coming, and it ended up being Paizo.
Yep.
Okay. I think I can bring up that agreement because I think we should go through it and see. Or no, it's not an agreement. It's the announcement. Bring up that announcement here. Let me go over here to my notes. So right here. So how involved were you, Ryan, in the ORC announcement? I'm going to bring this up over here put it up on screen. But how involved were you in this?
I think it is going to come as no surprise to anybody who is listening to us speak that the publishing community is a very tight-knit and close community of friends. We have been in business with each other in some cases for decades, in other cases for 6 months, but we are friends with each other more than we are competitors. It is one of the most unique parts about this industry. It is unlike any other business I have ever been in my life. We are friends first and competitors second. And as friends, the friends have reacted by drawing together and trying to find a way through the problems created by Wizards of the Coast's incorrect assumptions that they can deauthorize or otherwise do away with the open gaming license. So there has been an effort to organize a plan about what to do next on the part of the publishers. And that organization has been ongoing for some time. I was asked if I would agree to have my name associated with that press release in the way that it was associated. And I said, yes. I'm not a part of that system. I don't work for Paizo. I have never published anything with the open gaming license. I'm not a party to it myself personally. So to the degree that they said that I had participated in the brainstorming process or the thinking behind the license, whatever they said about me, that's all true. But that effort is being undertaken by the companies that are involved, and I am not one of those people that is actually involved in that process.
Okay. So one question I would have is, should we have anticipated this, like Paizo's move here? Because in retrospect, I go, oh my God, something like an announcement like this should have been anticipated, because the community has a history about going and playing Pathfinder from Paizo when they don't like what Dungeons and Dragons is doing already, right? That's in, and that Paizo has come, and I wasn't personally playing at 4th edition, so I didn't personally experience that because I was not just gaming at the time, I was out of it. But the community has that experience, and Paizo has come and rescued the community once before in our, a manner of speaking. Should we have anticipated that they come and try to do that again? Because it seems like a brilliant business move. I mean, this is a brilliant business move.
Well, I
yes.
mean, the biggest people in the room, you've got with great power comes great responsibility. And to that certain extent, I'm glad that they decided to put their weight behind solutions, right? Trying to find ways forward.
People have said that they want to be a fly in the room in WotC, and I would also love to be a fly in the room in WotC and figure out what's going on. But also, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall at Paizo, and maybe they're going, oh my God, WotC's about to do it again. Like WotC's doing it again, and here we go. Here's our opportunity to come back and take this from them. We should study, I think, Paizo as far as business strategy goes. And what they are doing. Okay, let's look at this, and like we did, chime in when you have a comment. Like, I don't want this. We don't want to go on here, but this is what they said. If you're not familiar with what they said, and then Ryan, questions, whatever, or let's just chime in. So this was yesterday. For the last several weeks, as news of Wizards of the Coast new version of the open gaming license began circulating among publishers and on social media, gamers across the world have been asking what Paizo plans to do in light of Wizards' intention to deauthorize the existing OGL 1.0A. We have been waiting for further information, hoping that Wizards of the Coast Hasbro would realize that for more than 20 years, the OGL has been a mutually beneficial license, which should not and cannot be revoked. They have the right language.
Yes.
Which is why I've been supporting them.
Yes.
Since this came out. That is exactly the language that the community wants and needs to hear. With so many different people, you go, what's the kind of statement should they make? That is the statement you have to make.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not that complicated.
It is not that complicated.
Yeah.
That's it. And Paizo made it. And that's why the community is rallied. We believe that any interpretation that the OGL 1.0 or 1.0A were intended to be revocable or able to be deauthorized is incorrect and with good reason. And that's the conclusion that we came to in an educated opinion after hearing you, Ryan, and then going through the Tarantino dissertation and all of that. But also, they say with good reason because we were there.
That's right. So they all were. That's right. Oh, I love watching my team.
Which is fantastic.
Field of battle. They're such good people. Yeah.
By the way, we now have a record-breaking live stream as far as viewership. Thank you, everybody who is watching. We've got 258 people viewing. So thank you. This is a record. 259. This is a record for the channel. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to take some Q&A from the chat in a bit. So hang with us if you have questions that you want to ask. But also, please do hit the like button and share this out. It would be great to have more of the community here for this discussion. But thank you all for being here. This is a record-breaking live stream. Thank you so much. Okay, so Paizo owner Lisa Stevens and Paizo president Jim Butler were leaders on the Dungeons and Dragons team at Wizards at the time. Brian Lewis, that's the lawyer we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Co-founder of Azora Law, the intellectual property law firm that Paizo uses, was the attorney at Wizards who came up with the legal framework for the OGL itself. Paizo has also worked very closely on an OGL-related issues with Ryan Dancey, who was here with us, the visionary who conceived the OGL in the first place.
That is all true. Well, except for the visionary part. Yeah, and I should probably say for the record that Brian Lewis is my attorney too. His law firm is the attorney of record for Alderac Entertainment Group.
Okay. And like I said, we have throughout all of this, we have realized like how much we knew the OGL. We didn't know the name Ryan Dancey, but all of a sudden the terminology of the name of the OGL exploded. Everybody knows the OGL, but now everybody also knows Ryan Dancey, who gives it to us.
I was almost out, and they're pulling me back in.
Because we've known Ryan Dancey for years. Those of us who have been following the OGL and dreamed of building our own game materials, we're like going, yes, this is awesome. He rocks.
Yeah, but it's going to be here shortly that like Ryan Dancey is your name is mentioned in the same breath as Gary Gygax. If this goes on,
that's nonsense. The only thing that Gary Gygax and I have in common is that I was on a stage with him once.
Paizo does not believe. So this is the verbiage that we all want. Paizo does not believe that the OGL 1.0A can be deauthorized ever.
Yep.
Plain and simple. And then everybody loved this. Exactly. While we are prepared to argue that point in a court of law, if need be, that they're the ones who are going to bat for all of us.
Yeah.
And that means a lot to me, to all kinds of publishers. I mean, that means a lot, because that wouldn't only be defending them. It would be defending them and what they're doing with the, what they've done with the OGL, but it would be defending all of us.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't want to have to do that. And we know that many of our fellow publishers are not in a position to do so. And we're not. So we have no interest whatsoever in OGL's and Wizards' new OGL. Instead, we have a plan that we believe will irrevocably and unquestionably keep alive the spirit of the open gaming license. And we were just talking about the spirit of the community that's been generated in the past 22 years is what this is about in so much degree and to such a large degree. This is the way we have been operating. It's right. And now somebody's trying to change that in a big way, in a wrong way. If as Paizo has evolved, the parts of the OGL that we ourselves value have changed. When we needed to quickly bring about Pathfinder's first edition to continue publishing our most popular monthly adventures back in 2008, using Wizards language was important and expeditious. But in our non-RPG products, including our Pathfinder Tales novel, Pathfinder Adventure card game, and others, we shifted our focus away from D&D tropes to lean harder into ideas from our own writers. By the time we went to work on Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Wizards of the Coast's open game content was significantly less important to us, and so our designers and developers wrote the new edition without using Wizards' copyrighted expressions of any game mechanics. While we still published it under the OGL, the reason was no longer to allow Paizo to use Wizards' expressions, but to allow other companies to use our expressions. What about that?
Okay, let's talk about that, because it's interesting and it bears on the question of copyright law. So what they're saying there is that the value that they derived from the system reference document, which was licensed to them using the open gaming license, is that they didn't have to write the words about how things worked in the game system. They could take the exact words that Wizards of the Coast used in the system reference document and use those words in their own products without any fear of litigation. That is part of what the open gaming license is designed to do. It is actually the only really true copyright that exists in game publishing. You can copyright the actual expression of the game rules themselves. You can't copyright the idea of roll a 20-sided dice, add some modifiers, and compare it to a target number. That's not copyrightable. But I could write a paragraph to describe how to do that, and the actual paragraph itself can be copyrighted. So Wizards licensed an amazing amount of words that you could use exactly as written if you wanted to. And Paizo did use a lot of those words in the first edition of Pathfinder when they published it. When they did Pathfinder 2nd edition, they didn't use any of the text that Wizards of the Coast had provided as a part of the system reference documents that they licensed with the open gaming license. They are using the same ideas with all new words. Herein, essentially, is the point of the open gaming license. Is that legal? Well, the open gaming license says you don't have to worry about it. You just don't have to have the argument. Maybe it's legal, Maybe it isn't. That would be something that you would have to fight over in a court of law if there was a dispute. With the open gaming license, you don't have to have that fight. The open gaming license says it's completely okay as long as you use the open gaming license and follow its conditions, terms, and provide the same rights to anybody who gets that work from you. You are okay. What Paizo is saying in this sentence is essentially, we don't need it. We don't need the open gaming license. We don't need the system reference document. We wrote a role-playing game that doesn't use any of Wizards of the Coast's copyrighted expression. And therefore, we don't need the open gaming license. That's the argument they're making in that sentence. That's a pretty big argument, but that's the argument they're making in that sentence.
Ryan, I have a question for you. I mean, one of my concerns is, and I know none of us are lawyers here. I don't think you're a lawyer.
I'm not an attorney. I'm married one, but
but one of my concerns is I think about the way that case law from years and decades ago oftentimes doesn't apply to modern technology. And what I picture someone doing is stepping up and saying, here's the 2-page Monopoly rules, and here's the 360-page rule book for our game. And this is source code. This is like software source code, and that is IP, and that is copyrightable. And I worry about them being able to win that fight.
Yes, that has always been the worry. Look, this is one of the things that's kind of ironic about our business. Every single person who publishes a role-playing game, every company that publishes a role-playing game that is above a certain size, absolutely believes they have the right to use the copyright law to limit your ability to use those rules to make products that are essentially compatible with the role-playing game. They all believe that. This is not a Wizards of the Coast thing. Every publisher of a role-playing game above a certain size, 100% believes that is true. And they have licensed games and game rules to each other almost since the dawn of the role-playing game as a concept. It is not a weird Wizards of the Coast thing. It is a universal assumption. It might be wrong, but it is universal. The assumption is universal, right? And the threat of litigation is ever present. And there has been litigation. Wizards of the Coast was involved in litigation over this exact question at the very dawn of the company. So if you are a person who wants to publish a role-playing game, or if you are an investor in a company that wants to publish a role-playing game, you don't want the risk. We could have philosophical arguments all day about whether it's real or not. What's real is that you could get sued. You might lose, you might win, but you could get sued. And nobody wants to be sued. So the open gaming license just solves the problem. It says no suits, no lawsuits. As long as everybody plays by these rules, there won't be litigation. There just won't be. So you can go out and raise money to invest in a game company. You can spend your life savings on a game company. And as long as you follow these rules, you don't have to worry about being sued on this matter, this question about, can I make a derivative work of a role-playing game without permission of the copyright holder? The open gaming license says, don't worry about it. It's not a problem.
And here also, which I was not aware of with Pathfinder 2nd Edition until all of this past week, because I've been getting into Pathfinder because of all of this and trying to learn how to play. But when we were talking about different trees being planted and the whole forest that is OGL, this means that Pathfinder 2nd Edition is another huge tree. I mean, there are all kinds of small trees.
That's correct. Exactly.
The NDSRD is a big one, but this means that Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a giant tree there.
That's the argument they're making. Yes.
Okay, we're going to get back to that point after this. I've got it, but we're going to go through this. But I've got a springboard off of that. But Paizo continues to say, we believe, as we have always have, that open gaming makes games better, improves profitability for all involved, and enriches the community of gamers who participate in this amazing hobby. And so we invite gamers from all around the world to join us as we begin the next great chapter of open gaming with the release of a new, open, perpetual, and they added this word, irrevocable in italics, open RPG creative license, or ORC.
Yes.
The branding here is also a stroke of genius. That's right. I laughed out loud, like actually laughing out loud when I read that. And I went, oh my God, it's called ORC. I love that. So they're also branding experts over there. I mean, because, okay, because we were talked about earlier in this that the we got the SRD and everything with the OGL, but it was a business decision on the part of Wizards of the Coast. This is also a business decision on the part of Paizo. We don't want to, we want to talk about that in both cases, but in this case, it also seems to be another brilliant business decision to come out and get everybody flooding to Pathfinder. And all the memes all the memes about ORC and all of that. I mean, this has been all over the place. And I'm sure there are going to be business articles written about in business school about this and how you get people to virally, generate ORC memes and all of that. I mean, it just seems brilliant. The new open RPG creative license we built system agnostic for independent game publishers under the legal guidance of Azora Law, an intellectual property law firm that represents Paizo and several other game publishers. Okay, I want to talk about that. Because actually, Mark, you had brought up in a text message to me about the difference between a system and the license. And this one does seem, we should talk about that difference right here, because it says the new open RPG creative license will be built system agnostic. But that is the same way with the OGL. The OGL is also system agnostic.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because it can be applied to any system. But I guess that is telling people who maybe are not quite as well versed in this, that this is not specifically something to license the Pathfinder system.
Yes.
It can license any system.
I'm sure that's
some people mix that up, right?
I don't want to speak. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I'm sure that's why they did that.
Yeah. Even though, we don't want to. Those are two separate things. Originally, the OGL and the SRD worked in tandem. The license is separate from the object that it's licensing.
Yeah.
Okay. So Paizo, again, coming out being the hero in the tabletop gaming community, says that they pay for this legal work to get all of this done. And then we invite game publishers worldwide to join us in support of the system agnostic license that allows all games to provide their own unique open rules reference document that open up their individual game systems to the world. To join this effort and provide feedback on the drafts of this license, please sign up using this form, which I did. So on this channel, as I get stuff, Mark did. So we will be following that.
Yeah.
In a certain way, this is if you've lost faith. You can do this if you've lost faith.
Yes.
The OGL may be completely bulletproof, and we believe it is. But if you have lost faith in it, here is an alternative.
I don't know that I've lost faith in the OGL. I've lost faith in Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro's willingness to respect it, right? I haven't lost faith in it. The OGL itself is awesome. I mean, if I didn't have faith in it, I wouldn't have published my books under it. But, I've lost faith in Wizard and Hasbro's willingness to stick to their promises at this point.
Well, that's an important distinction to make as well. Loss of faith in the OGL itself is different from loss of faith in Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro. Yeah. And I know that there has been a lot of faith lost in Wizards of the Coast.
Well, and I should say, I don't know who's involved in this. So I don't know that I've lost faith in Wizards. I've lost faith in whoever the person is who's in charge of making these decisions. And at this point, for me, it's Hasbro level as a creator. But I don't know who, because I know there's a lot of really good people working at Wizards doing really cool stuff. I respect them, and I bet they're fighting tooth and nail, just sitting there going like, oh my God, why are they doing this?
Yeah, I was, yes. So that's another great distinction to make. When I was saying lost faith in Wizards, I was definitely talking about the business structure, the board business decision makers, and what they're going to do. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so in addition to Paizo, Kobold Press, Chaosium, Legendary Games, and a growing list of publishers have already agreed to participate in the Open RPG creative license, and in the coming days, we hope and expect to add substantially to this group. It seems like behind the scenes, what Ryan was talking about, so many people are friends, they know each other, much more friends than competitors. This network of communication was probably already there, and with the speed at which communication is today, I was talking about that 24, 48 hours in. I was like, the amount of organization that has taken place over the weekend since the, after the original leak was incredible. So it seems like everybody pulled together. The ORC. Okay, the ORC. Now, this is also a distinguishing feature that this does distinguish what they're doing from what Wizards of the Coast has been doing, or with the OGL. So it says the ORC will not be owned by Paizo, nor will it be owned by any company who makes money publishing RPGs. Was that, Ryan, a flaw in the original OGL? Because that was copyrighted by Wizards.
In my opinion, no. I don't think it matters in the slightest.
Okay. But this probably does give people more faith.
I mean, they're beginning from a position of saying that if you've lost confidence in this other system, we want you to build new confidence in a new system, and they probably have brainstormed a list of things that would help build that confidence. So it's harmless, and it passes a Hippocratic test. It does no harm. Maybe it's good, but it does no harm.
Okay. So Azora Law's ownership of the process and stewardship should provide a safe harbor against any company being bought, sold, or changing management in the future, attempting to rescind rights or nullify sections of the license. This is the same point we were just making. Right. Ultimately, we plan to find a nonprofit with a history of open source values to own this license, such as the Linux Foundation. Again, I think if it does no harm, it certainly adds, I think it does add faith. So again, good business move. Good business move.
Right.
Okay. Now, of course, this tells you what goes on with Pathfinder specifically. Of course, Paizo plans to continue publishing Pathfinder and Starfinder even as we move away from the open gaming license. Since months worth of products are still at the printer, you will see the familiar OGL 1.0A in the back of our products for a while yet. While the open RPG creative license is being finalized, we'll be printing Pathfinder and Starfinder products. I thought it was interesting, without any license. And then we'll add the finished license to those products when the new license is complete, which I don't give a date on. There's no date on that yet here. And then they do actually, so this part is telling you to go and support Pathfinder and Starfinder. And hey, we should say use the Open Gaming discount code. And I didn't clue in on this until I was listening to the other stream, the Roll for Combat stream today. But 25% is exactly what the royalty that Wizards of the Coast was trying to take from you, and that's what they're giving you with that. So again, another stroke of business marketing genius. And they say, we'll be there at your side. You can count on us not to go back on our word forever. Ending very strongly. So that was where we ended yesterday night. And I had a party here on the stream. we had the Paizo party here on the stream yesterday. So what I'm going to do, because I know we've got chat here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a marker in the chat, and I'm going to say, question. We're not going to be able to do everybody's questions, but if you've got questions for the Q&A based on what we have talked about, I'm going to put a chat, a note in the chat here. So I'm going to go back to that point, and I will see what people say. I've got a question for Ryan, and then we will see what questions you might have to ask. So there you go. So please post after that questions for Q&A, or, I forgot the A. I didn't type the A, but questions for Q and I wrote. Q, okay. Questions for Q. So my question then was, okay, is the orc kind of a natural evolution? I mean, you may have answered some of this, but when I was looking at that, I was going, so is the orc, as they're envisioning it, a sort of a natural evolution of the OGL? Does it not at least seem to provide some advantages that the other one did not? We were talking about perception, and perception matters as far as faith and things like that, given what's happened, that it may provide new advantages that the other one didn't and a reason to publish under it. Is this a natural evolution?
Okay. I'm going to say that rule number one of opposing a powerful force is don't damage your allies. So I have nothing to say about Orc. My goal is to get Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast to publicly say that the open gaming license is not deauthorized and cannot be revoked. After that happens, I will have lots to say about what comes next.
Fair enough. I think that's a great statement. And that is how we started off this stream. If you were just joining in, that is how we started off this stream. We said that is, in fact, the goal and why we are still here and why we're talking about it. Because the statement from Wizards of the Coast, which we will get into, I believe that's next, is not what we considered acceptable. And so we did not accept that because it doesn't contain the language that acknowledges that they acknowledge that that's the case, that it is not irrevocable. So yes, that is why we are here. It does bring up the point that you talk. So yeah, fair enough point. I mean, perfect point. Excellent. So, but it does bring up the point that you talked about on another stream, specifically here, that what is the value of a license? How do you know if you've got a good one or a bad? Well, you can have a fantastic license and you go, man, this license is just incredible. But the license and what it's licensing are two different things. And so the important way to assess the value of the license is in, okay, what type of rights or whatever is this license granting, but then what kind of property or object is it granting a license to? So the OGL or the ORC by itself may be a great license. Man, this is a great license. But what it applies to is what gives it value. What gave the OGL value in the beginning was that it was connected to the D&D SRD. The ORC would not be connected to that, but they are saying that it could be connected to what would become the equivalent of a Pathfinder SRD. Right. Okay, let's see what people are saying in the comments here. Okay, Building Persephone. Let's see what Building Persephone says. Question: in my opinion, Wizards of the Coast machinations designed to monetize and digitize players, corner the market, and turn creators into sweatshop freelancers. Would Ryan and Mark agree, or is there more to the story?
I don't feel like I'm qualified to have an answer to that question. I'm not in the room and I haven't seen the business. I mean, I can tell you that I believe strongly Wizards of the Coast sees a digital future for Dungeons and Dragons. They want to control and own the platform where digital Dungeons and Dragons is played. I think they're smart enough to know that they need to make that platform something that third parties can contribute to, and they want to make that happen. And in order to make that happen, there has to be a way to monetize in the same way that Apple monetizes the App Store and Steam monetizes the Steam platform and Google monetizes the Google Store. Like, I'm sure it's easy to see the way that you do this. And lots of companies have done it now. You create an open marketplace for content that can be sold on your site. I don't want to talk about the ethics of that. If you don't like that idea, that's okay. If you don't want to play a digital version of D&D, that's okay. If you don't think Wizards of the Coast should try to create a walled garden, that's okay. But I'm not going to have an opinion about the ethics of it.
Okay. We have a super chat here. So the super chats we will definitely take during the Q&A. So if you have a super chat, we'll definitely take those. So Roberto Romano, thank you very much. A $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. Robert asks, Wizards of the Coast indicated in their statement that they would police OGL content for so-called hate speech. Can Wizards of the Coast revoke a contributor's OGL for offensive speech?
But okay, let's unpack that. Robert, great statement. It is such a can of worms. Let's just take your first sentence first. Wizards wants to police open game license content for hate speech. How? They have supposedly a policy that allows you to use the license if you are a small contributor, and I hate the fact that they've defined small and big, but I'm going to use their terminology, small contributor. An infinite number of people could use it as a small contributor. How are they going to police it? How? Are they going to hire an army of people to read every piece of material that's published using this license everywhere in the world, in every medium, in every language? How do they expect to do that? No, they're going to selectively enforce it. They're going to police it when they want to. They're going to decide, oh, well, this thing is offensive and we want to make it stop. They're not going to police everything. They're just going to police the things that they think matter. Second thing is, can Wizards of the Coast revoke a contributor's OGL for offensive speech? If you're asking about OGL version 1.0a, the answer is no. There is no limitation whatsoever in what you can publish with the 1.0a version of the Open Gaming License. And over 22 years, the community has proven that it is more than able to police itself to push hateful speech to the side and to push aside bad actors. An enforcement mechanism isn't necessary. The community itself protects against that kind of offensive material. We don't want it in our world, and we don't use it. It doesn't have to be legally enforced because the community itself rejects it.
So, Ryan, first off, I agree completely. The thing that I wonder about is, Are they worried that that's somehow going to reflect upon them if someone's writing using their rule set? But I mean, honestly, I think this is an excuse to make it sound like they were doing this for good reasons. But putting that aside,
I want to talk about that too. For sure. But Mark, you're totally right. Currently, if somebody publishes something that's offensive, Wizards of the Coast can say, "We got nothing. We don't review. We have no approval process. We're not responsible for it at all. It has nothing to do with us. Period." Mic drop, walk away. If they have the right to police it, then they are responsible for all of it.
Yeah.
They can't drop the mic and walk away. They own it. If somebody publishes the most awful, terrible thing imaginable using their new license, they have to deal with it, because otherwise they will be as guilty of making that terrible, awful content as the original publisher. They are like, again, there's many parts of this where I feel like they don't know what they're doing. This is one of those places. They don't understand the burden they are giving themselves. If I was a Hasbro shareholder, I would be irate about that idea.
They're basically taking ownership of it all. Like you said,
they are.
It's a double-bladed sword. You can take ownership of all this stuff, but you get ownership of all this stuff.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Open D&D asks a question for Ryan. Do you think the trademark itself for Dungeons and Dragons is too generic to move forward after 50 years? Thank you, sir.
No, it's the opposite of generic. It has tremendous value. Tremendous. Absolutely enormous value. Like you could take the system reference document, and people did, and just publish it. You could just make up a piece of art, wrap it in a cover, and put it on sale. You're not going to sell very many copies of it. Nobody's going to really want to buy it. But if you do that and call it the Player's Handbook of Dungeons and Dragons, apparently you sell tens of millions of copies. That's the brand value of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, look, the analogy I would use is Coca-Cola. Anybody can make some brown-colored, syrupy drink that's fizzy. You won't sell any of it. But if you have the right to call it Coca-Cola, you will sell billions of dollars of it. This is the very heart of why we were allowed to proceed with this project in the first place. And it was a super, super painful thing for people inside Wizards of the Coast to hear and then to live with. The work that they did on the game rules has a monetary value of 0. And that the value is in the brand of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, they made that brand more valuable by making really good rules. So what they did was they increased the brand value of Dungeons and Dragons. But the thing that they did has no monetary value. They're just rules to a game. They mean nothing without the brand.
Because there are a lot of games with really good rules that no one knows about, right? That is out there today.
Yes, that's exactly right. Value does not accrue based on the arbitrary goodness of your game system. It accrues on the basis of how good your brand is. And I am a game designer. I have an Origins Award. Like, I understand how difficult and painful it is to wrestle with that idea that what game designers really do is they make brands more valuable. It's a tough, super hard thing to hear. Super hard. And what I hope game designers hear is that what they do does add value, tremendous value. In the case of Dungeons and Dragons, probably $1 billion of value. By doing what they do really well, they make that brand more valuable. That's what they do.
I will point out, though, that that's one of the things we do here on this channel as far as other RPGs. So the Morning Grind is my morning show. And for the past 2 months, basically almost every day without fail, I think I missed 4 days because of like Christmas and stuff, we've looked at a different RPG and tried to learn how to play and stuff like that. So the Morning Grind is the place to look at that if you're looking for the way what other RPGs are out there and how to play them.
Super cool.
So Ryan, Abe Green says, Ryan, would you be willing to participate as a witness in any litigation to defend the OGL 1.0A?
Well, I will tell you that one of my friends who is a lawyer has told me that I should buy a new suit and I should be prepared to spend a lot of time in conference rooms and courtrooms in the upcoming year. I think that there might be a time and a place where I was an expert witness for various parties, but nobody has contacted me, and I have no such arrangement with anybody at this time. And perhaps having done a couple of live streams, a Medium article, and a bunch of Twitter posts, nobody needs me to speak anymore. I don't know.
Could be. We read the Medium post. I read the Medium post before we went live, so we will get to that because I put that on there. So let's do one more question and then go forward, because I think this is also an interesting one, and which is the issue of distraction. So Severin says or asks, do you think that the concession of no royalties will be enough to distract enough people so they can still think they can move forward with 1.AO deauthorization?
No, I do not. I was talking this morning with another friend of mine who I'm not at liberty to discuss, and his comment was they fundamentally do not understand that part of what it means to be a role-playing game player, and especially a Dungeons and Dragons player, but even a Pathfinder player or a Call of Cthulhu player or any game system you want to mention. Part of what it means now is that you are a part of a community of people who have the right of free expression to use licenses like the Open Gaming License to freely copy, modify, and distribute role-playing game product content. They don't somehow they don't understand it. That is now a part of what it means to be a part of this community. It's a freedom issue. It's a human rights issue. The money issue matters to them. Like, I'm sure that the decision to remove the royalties from their proposed Open Gaming License was essentially total surrender on their part. Somebody has gone absolutely to the wall arguing for this case on the basis of how much money they were going to make. And that person had to sit in a conference room and agree to take that language out of the license. And for that person, that is the absolute end. Like, the whole effort is now in vain in that person's mind, I'm sure. But it has never been the point of the objections, ever. It's a problem. The objections are huge and enormous. The money was a part of it, but it was never the reason why the firestorm erupted.
And I'm deeply confused by the person who thinks that most of us ever expect to pay royalties, right? Like, to think that that's the part that was the most egregious to this large mass of us who are never going to ever make enough money doing this to pay royalties, to take that out, it's just like we're all sitting here like, oh, we don't care.
That was the shock and awe hammer they tried to use against the publishers. That was it. They talked to the people who would pay royalties.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they're talking to. The people who do make more than $750,000 a year. That's who was having those conversations.
The ones that really made angry, though, are the ones who are never dream of making that much, and that's where they
made the community angry. I mean, maybe there's 100 companies that publish, commercially tabletop role-playing game products. They made 1 million people angry. I got 12,000 people to sign a petition telling Wizards of the Coast not to do this.
Great. I saw a comment after this that I said, did you see the post from Wizards today? Yes. And we're going to do that. We got a super chat. So let's address the super chat. And then we will go, if everybody can stay, we'll talk about what Wizard announced today. But Marek Wolf for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. It's so good to have you here. Thank you so much. I believe that's $10 Canadian. Says, do you believe all of this has had a negative effect on the D&D brand? What do you see as a win in this horrible situation? We probably all agree on the negative effect, but the win is also very interesting. Mark or Ryan, you want to take that first, and then Mark, and then I've got comments on that too.
Inarguably, it has damaged their brand. I don't think any rational person could say at this point the brand is more valuable today than it was 2 weeks ago. Like, I don't know how you can make that argument. What do I see as a win? I see Wizards of the Coast making a public statement that they will never attempt to deauthorize or revoke the 1.0A version of the Open Gaming License. That's a win for me. That's my definition of win. That's where I am today. That's what I want to win right now. I want that.
Yeah, and as far as the brand goes, I mean, I think that we can't underestimate the number of people who have no clue what's happening and will never know what happened, right? We can't underestimate that. The ones who are going to go to the movie, people are going to go to the movie, they'll never know and never care. There are even people within our industry who are just like, chill out, folks. You just want to use their rules for free, right? I mean, honestly, that's there. But the reality is that knowing now that this has gone beyond, like, the thing I was saying is that it's great for Hasbro that this has become so mainstream, which means that when it became an issue, the New Republic and CNBC and the Guardian and all the others picked it up. It's like you realize that mainstream has two edges to it, right?
Right.
And as a result, I think that, yes, it has been damaged in part because it's gone mainstream, and it made a good story to say, the villain today, the dragon, is Hasbro.
Yeah, the negative, I think it's absolutely been a negative hit on the brand. I do say, obviously, within everybody who is actually part of the community, it has absolutely taken a devastating hit, and it took them way too long to put out any kind of statement and recover from that. I think at the speed at which the internet moves today, I mean, that will also be used, I think, probably as an example of how not to handle some type of crisis or leak. As we talked about Paizo as examples in business schools about how to take advantage of something, that is this is an illustration of how not to do that. I mean, now again, that's right, because what Mark was saying is right, because I could completely be living in a bubble, and it probably am in this regard, in that I am so connected to tabletop gaming, the Geekverse. I mean, I run this channel and all of that kind of stuff. So here, but I'm careful to say what Mark said, that if the goal is to get someone who is not connected, as a normal person, to go and see this movie and go, whoa, this is an incredible movie, and then pick up the starter set from Target and then perhaps get on the D&D Beyond thing, it may never, I mean, there could be so many of those people that it doesn't matter. We will have to see. I do want to say, with regard to the movie, that I've seen with regard to other movies and things that have been happening. I haven't really been covering movies here, but movies on other YouTube channels I've been watching. You don't want to underestimate the power of a whole bunch of irate YouTuber, a whole bunch of irate geeky YouTubers specifically, to deal some damage there. So it's not impossible that some damage could certainly be dealt there. As this gets wider circulation, and then impact the movie and impact the brand more generally. I think that's possible. I think Ryan is completely correct in saying, what is the ultimate win? The ultimate win that we have to be driving on is the Wizards has to recognize that it has no authority to revoke or deauthorize the OGL or whatever. That's the big win. But I would say that, if we don't call it a win, something positive that is currently happening is that I've never felt more unity and with the community, and I'm not even highly connected to it. As far as you're talking about all the insiders with publishers and things like that, but as far as the unity of the whole community as a whole and where we are going, and pride to be part of the tabletop gaming community and what we're doing, much more friends than competitors, like Ryan was saying, I think that is a huge positive. I hadn't felt that in a long, long time, like with connection with anything. But I'm feeling it now with the tabletop community, which is obviously one that I love. And so that's a positive thing that's going on here. We have 408 people watching, which is a channel record. Thank you so much for everyone who is showing up. Thank you so much. We are about to get into the Wizards release. If you started this live stream, we started with a recap of where we were, and then we've been going through in chronological order the last basically 24 hours. So we understand everything in context about what's been happening. Okay, so let me see which screen have I got up. Okay, so that happened, and we all had a party last night. I know I did. And then we ended up with, wait. There's one thing that actually happened that I don't understand, but we should at least put this marker in here, because maybe you guys have insight that I do not. There was some type of leak, and people were telling me about that on my live stream this morning when I was teaching Pathfinder, but I couldn't find it because there was some type of leak of 2.0 FAQ material, which puts out this idea of 2.0 out there, but it's not a public leak. So that wasn't, we can't just go download it. So, I mean, I don't have access to it. It wasn't leaked to me, which is fine. But I was trying, there's a leak. I can't find it. Oh, you can't find it. It was sent to some people. So some people were talking about FAQ that references 2.0. Do you guys know more information about that or understand how it relates to all of this?
I saw it, but I don't know its provenance, so I don't want to speculate about it. I don't know if it's real or not.
Yep. Same.
Okay. So as a marker on the timeline, that happened, and there were some streams that were talking about it. So, but yeah, I don't personally have any information on that either. That's okay. So then that happened, but then it was quickly overshadowed by the release of the WotC statement.
And I will say that in that leak, they did refer to it as Open Gaming License 2.0 for the first time. It was originally being discussed as a 1.1 release. And then when the Wizards put out their statement today, they referred to it as 2.0 as well.
Oh, that's a good point. So that in the statement it's 2.0?
Yes.
Part of that probably has to do with, I was saying that search engines, if people are looking for what's 1.1 or something like that, we need a different name for this so that people, it's not that, this is something different. Yeah, there was some controversy around 1.1, but now this is 2.0.
Yeah.
Okay. So this, this right here is the statement. So I guess, a lot of people were saying, well, when are they going to put something out? If there was the non-statement, there was nothing, and this is a holiday weekend coming up. Well, I guess you could put together this blog post as a statement. Like all night. Okay, I guess you could do that if it were true, which is speculation, that they were going to announce a whole bunch of other stuff. Perhaps if they didn't for whatever reason and they needed to announce something else, well, all right, I guess they could do this.
Yeah.
So it says, when we initially conceived of revising the OGL, it was with three major goals in mind. First, we wanted the ability to prevent the use of D&D content from being included in hateful and discriminatory products.
That statement makes me so angry.
Okay.
Like, up to this point, I have kind of felt like this is a philosophical argument about how things should work and a legal argument about whether or not a license can be deauthorized and revoked or not. That statement to me is patently offensive. It doesn't even matter if it's true or not, because it wasn't true when they started. If this was something they wanted to make as their first thing, it would have been in the first communication they made when they did the first post about doing this. They're adding this. This is the worst kind of trying to wrap themselves in the values of the struggle for human decency. And it's shameful. And they should be called out for this statement. This is shameful.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like trying to say, don't get mad at us. We were trying to be righteous. Right?
Yeah.
Don't
Even
get
if
mad
it's true, it doesn't matter because you didn't say it until after the firestorm started.
Yeah.
And as we've pointed out as well, it's not even something that's true because they still control the D&D trademark. They still have perfect control over what because they say D&D content here.
Yes. They use D&D interchangeably with things licensed with the Open Gaming License in a way that leads me to believe they don't really understand how the license works. Whoever wrote this doesn't understand how the license works. Well, there's lots more of that later. I'm sure we'll get to it.
Yeah, they either don't understand how the license works, or they're trying to be deliberately obfuscative, or whatever that word is. Deliberately obscure.
Really hard to offer them grace and assume they're not doing it on purpose.
Right, and we don't know, but those are two options. Those are two options. Yeah. Second, we wanted to address those attempting to use D&D in Web3 blockchain games and NFTs by making clear that OGL content is limited to tabletop role-playing content like campaigns, modules, and supplements.
Yeah. Well, the first thing they don't have to do, because you can't use D&D in any of those things anyway with the current version 1.0a of the OGL. So that is fake news. That is claiming harm that does not exist. And then the second thing, which is that the OGL is only to be used for role-playing content like campaigns, modules, and supplements, is not true even in the text of the license. It doesn't say that anywhere because it's not true. The OGL can be used for anything. It's not limited to some specific kinds of content. It was never intended to be limited, and it isn't limited.
And third, we wanted to ensure that the OGL is for the content creator, the home brewer, the aspiring designer, our players, and the community, not major corporations to use for their own commercial and promotional purposes. And here they actually do specifically say OGL.
Yeah. Well, tough. Like 22 years ago when D&D was dying, a deal was made. And that deal helped save Dungeons and Dragons. And I can make the argument that it saved it twice, actually. It saved it in 2000 and it saved it in 4th edition. So, yeah, you made a deal and you need to live up to it. And if that means that some other people make money, that's the deal. Like, that was always the intention, that people would be able to make money from this. It's a commercial license. It licenses copyright rights. That's what it's for. It's okay. Like, you're not making any less money. Your brand value has grown every single year since 2000. And now it is a number with probably 6 or 7 extra digits in it. Like, it's ridiculous.
Because of this. Right. Because of this. That's why.
Because of this. Exactly. Right.
And it, of course, I mean, all of this kind of flew in my face. I mean, because this is the first 3 sentences, and we already have these major problems with the first 3 sentences with exactly what the statement is.
Yeah. It's so frustrating because they could have just been honest. They could have just said, We're changing our strategy. We envision a digital future. We want to own that future. We want to manage that platform ourselves. And we're changing the licensing terms to get there, which is true. But they didn't say that. They said three untrue things in the hopes that will give them cover for what they're trying to do.
And yeah, I got to say, I mean, one of the things we're trying to do is stay positive on building something, right? In our cool name RP, or cool name goes here. We're like, God, we just want to try to, at least from our perspective, stay positive. But with stuff like this, it's tough. It's tough to not be frustrated and angry and want to just like lash back at this stuff, because it just feels like they don't think that we recognize what's really going on. And we're gamers. We always look for hidden meaning and messages. It's how our characters survive most games, because the game master tries to trick us with exactly this sort of thing.
Now, we said at the top of the show, I said at the top of the show, one of the things that's happening is movement. Wizards of the Coast is moving. They are moving in the right direction. And the rest of what we're going to talk about is that movement. So that's the bad stuff. It's over with. Now we're going to talk about things that start to get better.
Right. But I want to say that I don't like that it says, for the home brewer. Well, we all start as home brewers, and then, or almost all of us, when we're designers, home brewing something. And then, okay, we're an aspiring designer. Hey, let's take this beyond the homebrew and let's become an aspiring designer. And then what if you get it published and then you become successful, which is what the OGL allowed and wanted and all of that. Right. But if you go from home brewer to aspiring designer and then all of a sudden you're successful with everything you've designed and you become a major corporation with a commercial and promotion, you're all of a sudden the enemy? Yeah. That's not the philosophy of the OGL. A major
corporation? Hasbro's market value is like $3 billion. What's a major? Somebody with $750,000 in revenue is not a major corporation. I mean, it's just nuts.
They're not even big enough to get venture capital funds at that size. Yeah. If you want to start talking about what major is, that's
Mattel is not using the open gaming license, although they certainly could. Like, that's a major corporation. Sony's a major corporation. Microsoft's a major corporation. Those are major corporations. The people they're talking about are not quote unquote major corporations.
And it's all, that's another part of this, is it's them punching down. We all perceive it's them punching down. It's not like them punching up at Microsoft.
Absolutely.
It's them punching down.
Yep. And it feels like I've been punched. To be honest, I think that's just hard. It does, because it's kind of like, look, I took money that I could have been saving for other things and I put it into this dream based on the OGL. I recognized, people are like, well, you should have known. Well, yeah, we did. We took that risk. But from a business perspective, 22 years without a single rumble suggests this
doesn't seem very risky.
Yeah. Right. And so when they do this, absolutely, they basically punched my dream in the gut and told me to throw away what I spent 2 decades worth. I get upset about this because this is, I don't know how they, anyway.
Well, it does. Yeah, I agree. Right? It feels the same way to me. It feels like all of a sudden, wait a minute, after this, that I'm the enemy. Like after running the company and the publishing stuff, wait, it turns out I'm the enemy of the whole operation here. What?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So driving these goals were 2 simple principles. 1, our job is to be good stewards of the game. And 2, the OGL exists for the benefit of the fans. Nothing about those principles has wavered for a second. Take it.
I have no objection to any part of that paragraph. Well, I don't believe the first sentence is true, but I do believe in number 1 and number 2.
Okay. Because they do say that we should all be good stewards of the game.
Right. We should. Right. We should.
Absolutely. Whether or not that was their ultimate goal.
We need to give it to our descendants. We have an obligation to be good stewards.
And of course, it does say the OGL benefits the fan. It doesn't say only the fan, but yes, the fans definitely, it exists for their benefit. Now, but whether or not that was actually the motivation of what they were doing, that's the question.
Yeah.
That's why our early drafts of the new OGL included the provisions that they did. Which, as Mark and I went through the whole thing on a live stream, and we're like, we didn't feel that. We didn't feel that.
Well, I mean, since they've never formally published early drafts of the OGL, I don't really want to speculate on what was in them because we don't really know.
The draft language was provided to content creators and publishers, so feedback could be considered before anything was finalized.
And boy, did they get some.
They got some feedback.
Hey, because I need something joyful, someone asked if we can read this like Darth Vader. That draft language was provided to content creators and publishers so their feedback could be considered before anything was finalized. There you go.
That's good. I didn't think about that. I did the dramatic reading of Paizo's thing, but I didn't think about like an evil overlord reading of this one. So in addition to the language allowing us to address discriminatory and hateful conduct and clarifying what types of products the OGL covers, our drafts included royalty language designed to apply to large corporations, which we just addressed, attempting to use OGL content. It was never our intent to impact the vast majority of the community. They impacted
except, of course, that by definition, any successful company has created a large portion of the community. So you're affecting them. If you're affecting the corporations that sell them products, you're affecting the large majorities of the community.
Right. Yeah. If you're affecting Paizo, if you affect a Kobold Press, especially, you're affecting everybody who buys and loves their products.
Yeah, exactly.
However, it's clear from the reaction that we rolled a 1.
Well, that's certainly true.
Yeah, boy, did they ever. It has become clear that it is no longer possible to fully achieve all 3 goals while staying true to our principles.
Pretty interesting, huh? Like they're willing to compromise their goals at this point. Like, really? If they were really your goals, like if it really mattered to you, would you ever compromise? Apparently they will. They are compromising. They're willing to move.
So I have to say that as a gamer, to say that we rolled a 1, it's cute that they're trying to use D&D terminology, but there was no chance involved here. They made very specific decisions throughout this process. This is more like when your players do something really dumb, not when they roll badly. This wasn't bad luck, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's
excellent
right.
point. I'd use that terminology too, but that's an excellent point. Okay. The next OGL will contain the provisions that allow us to protect and cultivate the inclusive environment we are trying to build and specify that it covers only content for tabletop role-playing games. And I've got, this is a weird sentence to me, but it says that means that other expressions such as educational and charitable campaigns, live streams, cosplays, VTT uses, etc., will remain unaffected by any OGL update. Content already released under 1.0A will also remain unaffected. There's a lot there to say. Let's start with this part. We will say, let's start with this point. Protect and cultivate the inclusive environment we are trying to build and specify that it only covers content for tabletop role-playing games. If they wanted to do something completely new for 6th edition and a license that only covers that, fine. But that's not what the OGL does.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
But then this is weird language, this other expressions, because they say that's only going to cover, that it only covers content for other tabletop games. But then they say that means that other expressions such as educational and charitable campaigns, live streams, cosplay, VTT uses, etc., will remain unaffected by any OGL update. To me, those are like there's something weird about this language here. To me, it seems like I would have said something like, if I were being straight here, and maybe they are, maybe it's just awkward wording, with the intention, but this covers only content for tabletop games, including educational and charitable campaigns, live streams, cosplay, VTT uses, etc. Wouldn't that be a more direct? I mean, that would be better language.
I mean, I think what it is a punch list of people who made objections to what they're trying to do. They don't have any good defense for why they want to change those people's lives. And so they've just said, oh, don't worry, we're not going to affect you. Like, stop complaining. Stop. Get off the air. Stop telling your fans that we're doing a bad thing. We're not going to touch you. Of course, they can't say that because there is no way to modify the license like they're talking about. It can't be done. They can't change the words of 1.0A. They can't. That's not possible. They can argue they have the right to deauthorize and revoke it, which they do not have, but they can't change it. They can make a new license, which no one will use, but they can't change the 1.0 license.
To me, yes, but to me here, it seems like they're trying to have it both ways, in the sense that, well, this is for tabletop RPGs, but then there are other things that are outside tabletop RPGs,
right? Which
that
apparently are okay.
A lot like within tabletop RPGs to me, that they're separate.
Yeah, it's super hard to parse. I mean, this gets back to the very genesis of the whole project in the first place. We would never have tried to figure out how to tell you what you could and couldn't license with a copyright license, because it's impossible to imagine all the things you could potentially do with it. The live stream thing is a great example. If I do a live stream of somebody playing a version of Dungeons and Dragons, is that a derivative work of the game Dungeons and Dragons? Some people might say yes. Some people might say no. In fact, as far as I know, virtually nobody who does a live stream uses the open gaming license anyway. So they're just going to rely on copyright law as it is. They're not attempting to get into the open gaming environment with their content. They don't need a license, apparently. They don't think they do. As far as I know, no one uses one. So if they want to publish a book based on the game that they do in their live stream, they feel like they need to use the open gaming license. But they don't feel like they need to use it to do the live stream. They might
cosplay.
They don't feel like they have to.
Before we go to this next sentence, this seems like a good place to bring this up. There was this word pantomime in the leak. Do you have any idea, Ryan, what that might be referring to?
Yeah, it's a thing in Europe. It's mostly in the United Kingdom. Panto is a giant cultural phenomenon. It usually happens around Christmas. Weirdly, David Hasselhoff is one of the biggest stars in pantomime, and it's ancient. It goes back to like the Middle Ages. So I'm guessing that somewhere in the UK somebody did a D&D pantomime thing, and so they had to put that word in, or they thought they should, or somebody on that group is from the UK and knows about it and thought it should be there. I don't know, but that's what it is.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So we were wondering, because we knew what pantomime was, but I was wondering who is exactly doing pantomime, because I was like, I don't know any D&D pantomimes. I maybe want to go look it up. I was like, who's the big pantomime D&D?
Did you hear anything though about someone said that some American Sign Language interpretations involve actually acting things out, and thus would be considered pantomime? That's one of the things that I read somewhere. Someone's saying. So,
sure.
One of my favorite
could even be right.
well, one of my favorite theories that came up in the chat on one of the other live streams was that they might be thinking about TikTok, that the movements on TikTok doing stuff. I was like, they could be like pantomime in TikTok.
Maybe. Who knows?
Okay, but then it says content, and I have a huge problem.
Which is probably the most important sentence in the entire thing.
Yeah, this is huge. So this will take a lot. Yeah. Content already released under the 1.0A will also remain unaffected. Take it, Ryan.
Yeah. Okay. Unaffected is not a legal term. It doesn't mean anything. Either the license is unrevoked and not deauthorized, in which case nothing has changed, and it is just like the world was a month ago. They have published 3rd, 3.5, and 5th edition, among other things, using the Open Gaming License 1.0A. And if this statement was interpreted correctly, which is unaffected means nothing has changed, then you could continue to publish games and game content using the content that Wizards of the Coast has already published using the 1.0 version of the OGL forever. The license is perpetual. It never ends. So either they are saying in this sentence, we give up. We're effectively agreeing that the license cannot be revoked and we will not attempt to deauthorize it. Or they are saying something that is impossible, that they can somehow grant rights to this material by somehow altering the terms of the deal, which is not permitted under the terms of the deal. It's binary. It's one or the other. But unaffected doesn't mean anything. It's not a word that means anything in a courtroom.
It seems to me like it's trying to set up some type of situation of like saying, "Oh, don't worry, you're grandfathered in." That
yes.
If you
or like all those books you have on your shelf, we're not going to order you to destroy them. Yes. What they probably meant to say was, we're not going to pursue anybody for infringement for any work published under the Open Gaming License 1.0A that has a publication date of June 30th, 2023. That would have been a statement that would at least be legal. But this statement is not legal in any way. But it does imply that they intend to leave the license unrevoked and authorized. I don't think that was their intention, but that's what it implies.
content already released, but then the other point is the content that will be released, because you will still be able to release content. That's what we're arguing.
That's what the open gaming license is. It's a license for the future. If it's unaffected, it means the license remains in effect.
All right. So then it also says what it will not contain is any royalty structure.
Yeah. And somebody just lost their job, probably.
Somebody just lost their mind? What? Oh, you're talking about at WotC?
Yeah.
Job.
I mean, somebody has inflicted massive pain on the organization to get money, and now they say they're not going to take any. That's got to be really bad for your job prospects.
But all right, so we got that. But it says it also will not include the license back provision that some people were afraid was a means for us to steal work.
Yeah.
Which it certainly seemed like.
It was absolutely possible. And they, of course, knew that. Whether or not they wanted to say that or not is irrelevant. There were people drafting that license, or people who wrote that language, and we haven't seen that language from them. All we've seen are leaks, which we don't know are true or not. But if that language is in the license, they knew they could use it for that. They're not surprised by that. That's something they knew.
Well, they say that thought never crossed our minds.
Yeah, well, that's just lies. I mean, okay, some minds might have never crossed, but not the mind of the person who wrote the language.
I also would like, in case anyone from WotC or Hasbro listens to this, I want to be really clear about something. Throughout this, they keep saying afraid and scared.
Yeah.
We're neither afraid nor scared.
That's right.
We are really, really pissed off. The small developers are not afraid. We're angry. And there's a big difference.
The whole community is angry. It's not just the publishers. It's the people are angry. Yeah.
Outrage.
Yeah.
But that there were so many things when Mark and I went through that leak that we were like, well, we would never publish under that license for this reason. We would never publish. If there was one thing in there, it would be like, no, it was like just hard nose all the way through it. Yeah. And that was one of many.
Yeah, it was tragic.
Yeah. And I was like, nobody I know who was trying to create worlds and fantasy worlds and sci-fi worlds would ever have published anything under that license.
Yeah.
But it says, under the new OGL, you will own the content you create. We won't.
No change. That's true now.
That's true now, and it was also true. See, any language we put in will be put down will be crystal clear and unequivocal on that point. Now, but see, as has been pointed out on another stream, which is a great point, that in that leak, it was also clear that you owned it. But as many people point out, ownership is a bundle of rights, and so you can still technically own it. Oh, you are the owner. We are crystal clear. You are the owner. You just have no rights to do anything with it.
Yeah. Or we have the rights to do things with it that are unilateral. They're not reciprocal. We don't have to give them to anybody else, and we don't have to give anything back to you. But we can use your stuff any way we want to. That's a pretty common thing people try to put into contracts.
The license back language was intended to protect us and our partners from creators who incorrectly allege that we steal their work simply because of coincidental similarities.
Okay.
I mean, okay, I know that is a concern that in licensing, and that's why sometimes people say, do not send me anything. Like, if people, if you're trying to, publish or something like that, do not send something to me. I don't even want to look at it because of potential issues like that. Because it does say, as we continue to invest in the game we love and move forward with partnerships in film, television, and digital games, the big things we've been saying are what they're trying to make the Dungeons and Dragons brand. That risk is simply too great to ignore. So great, they were willing, basically, destruction of the D&D community over it.
Yeah.
The new OGL will contain provisions to address that risk, but we do it without a license back and without suggesting we have the rights to the content you create. Well, we'll see. We'll read it. We'll see what it is. We're still not published under it, but okay. Your ideas and imagination are what makes this game special, and that belongs to you.
Also true.
Yes, it is.
Yes, we're aware.
A couple of last thoughts. First, we won't be able to release the new OGL today because we need to make sure we get it right, but it is coming. No date given here. Second, you're going to hear people this statement. Second, you're going to hear people say that they won and we lost because making our voices heard forced us to change our plans. Those people will be only half right. They won, and so did we.
Yeah. True statement, by the way. They did win from this. If they are forced to back down and to publicly say that they cannot deauthorize or revoke that license, they will win. It's good for them.
And the best part is that we don't want to win. We just want to publish our books.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want a trophy. I don't want to be top of the heap. I don't want to dethrone Wizards of the Coast. I'm not looking to win anything. I'm just looking to be able to do cool, creative stuff and get people to buy more WotC books. But apparently that's not, in the cards.
Stray in the comments this morning used the term narcissistic, and but that's how it felt to me. That, like, if I look at what happened to Wizards of the Coast over the past week, there's no way I could describe that as winning. That they felt, that they have won, and it's be like, hey, you know what? We've won too. That's so
I think
weird.
what it does is it sort of tells us what it tells me reading into it, and it's just speculation, but it tells me that someone is looking to win.
Yes.
And
Classic.
That's the point, right? Is that it's telling us that from their perspective, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser in this. And their goal is to win. When all of us are just like, we're role players. You don't win the game.
There's two winners. Us and them.
Yeah.
But there is no us and them, by the way. There's just one big community all using the same license. We're all winning.
We got one more paragraph here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another marker in the chat for a Q&A. Questions, Q&A. So on this section. So I'll put another marker in the chat. So if you have a question, good question. We can't take all questions, but if you have questions, I'll look for this marker in the chat. I just put questions, Q&A, and we'll start there. So the final paragraph here says, and there's problems here. I mean, there's problems throughout this. This is why it's just not an acceptable statement. It was not an acceptable statement because it didn't say that we were not going to revoke and deauthorize that core part. The OG, that was the core part that made this unacceptable. But everything else that was written here is also unacceptable. So it's just like, what our plan was always to solicit the input of our community before any update to the OGL. The drafts you've seen were attempting to do just that. False. They were leaked. Yeah. If they wanted to solicit maybe they intended to put this up on a blog post later. Maybe there's no way of knowing. We don't know what's in their head. It doesn't matter now. But the drafts that we saw were leaks that were not being shown to the community. If they wanted to solicit the input of the community, they could have put that document out as a blog post right here.
Yeah, they have an enormous platform. They could have.
Yeah, they do have the means to do that.
Yeah.
So, I do not believe that for a second. We want to always delight fans and create experiences together that everybody loves. Well, okay, probably true. Great. We realize we did not. What?
All in favor.
Yeah, we all want to do that.
Yeah.
But we realize we did not do this time, and we're sorry for that.
Well, that's good.
Our goal was to get exactly the type of feedback on what provisions worked and what did not, which we ultimately got for you.
Yeah, it's phony.
No way. If that was their goal, it would have been on this blog.
Yeah. Well, if that was their goal, it would have been part of the 1D&D surveys that we've been answering every month or so already, right? And it wasn't.
Any change this major could only have been done if we were willing to take that feedback, no matter how it was provided. So we are. I think it seems like they were trying to make this change without feedback. Like this was something that was just going to drop. I do not believe this. Yeah. Thank you for caring enough to let us know what works and what doesn't, and what you need, and there's that word scares you. What scares you? How about just what makes you absolutely infuriated?
Yeah.
Without knowing that, we can't do our part to make the new OGL match our principles. Finally, we'd appreciate the chance to make this right. We love D&D's devoted players and creators who take them on so many incredible adventures. We won't let you down.
Yeah, well, look, I'm happy to take them up on their offer. Make it right. Make a public statement that you will not deauthorize or revoke 1.0A of the license. That's how you make it right.
It's very simple. We saw Paizo make a statement. We were saying it's a very simple statement. That is what you need to say. That is what we all want to see. That's what the community needs to see. And it is a simple statement to make. And then go forward and do whatever you want with open 1D&D or 6th edition. And make it as great as you possibly can, so then everybody wants to go play it. Just do that.
I mean, I think in that last paragraph, they talked a whole lot about getting feedback from the community and knowing what people liked and didn't like, and finding out what the problems were. And they still haven't published a draft. They haven't. All of the drafts that you've seen are leaks. You don't know that they're real. They probably are real, but we don't know that they're real. They're not getting feedback on anything.
You're right. I mean, that's a great point. If when they're talking about wanting the feedback, this was not published with any type of,
They could publish it right now and say, this is a draft. We'd like your feedback, but they haven't done that. Yeah. And obviously they don't want feedback because they know that license is awful.
Okay, we have record-breaking live stream here. We have 508 people. Please do hit like, help get the stream out there. Please subscribe. I would love to have you as a subscriber on the channel. The link to the Discord is in the description. I'd love to have you as part of the Discord as well, and have you as part of the community. Let's take a look at some questions. I do see that there were some super chats and stuff, so I will look at super chats and then take a few of the questions from the Q&A sections. I want to scroll through and make sure that I don't miss any of the super chats, because I saw some stickers come through, and I want to be sure that we acknowledge all of those. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is so good to have you. DM Thor sent a $3 super sticker in. Thank you so much, DM Thor. Thank you so much for being here. And also thank you to the moderators who are in the chat working. I really appreciate all of the moderators in the chat. Thank you for being here. Oh, wow. So many chats. DM Thor sent a second super sticker. Thank you. Thank you very much. I saw a Icy Spin says going for 8 hours tonight. I don't think so. My longest live stream, I got rated. I believe it was Tuesday night. It was a 7-hour and 20-minute live stream.
Wow. That's hard work. So
that's the record and length, right? 7-hour and 20-minute live stream.
Unfortunately, I can't stay for 7.5 hours. I apologize.
I don't think I've got other things I've got to do as well. But Harlequin 74 for $10. Thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you very much. Harlequin says, I love the fact that it says will not contain any royalty structure. Sounds to me like there can still be a royalty fees, just not structured. More like we will charge you whatever we want.
Sure. At this point, you can't really trust anything they say. So sure, that's a great point.
Yeah. That's been a couple of people have mentioned that. So it could be, hey, if it's just a flat fee, right. Is no, that's not a structure. It's just here's your fee.
Structure. Sure is.
Let me see here. Okay, so here's the thing. So Minecraft Dragon version 2 for $5. Thank you so much for the super chat. WotC seems to be continuing to make blunder after blunder. Is there some timeline or business strategy that proves these are not mistakes?
Yeah, I have a friend who thinks it's not a mistake. The theory is they knew this was going to be painful and awful, and they don't see a way to not do this in some way. And so by doing it this way, they create all the pain and awfulness at a limited window of time where they can box it and say, that's when it all happened. It happened right there. And then going forward, they can choose their battles as to what they're going to fight over next. But they can get all of the bad news out all at once and just kind of tombstone it. Say, this is it. It's done. Forget about it. We're over. I don't think that's a great strategy. I don't actually think that's the strategy they're pursuing. But I could see somebody trying to make the argument that was a strategy.
In order to keep going with it. That's what they're going to do. They're just trying to get all of the bad out of the way and then not drag it out and then move on.
Yep. I mean, look, if somebody inside that building honestly really believes that they could succeed in deauthorizing, then they were never going to have a good day when they did it, ever. It was always going to be a bad day. So if they're going to do it and they think they can, they're wrong. But if they think they can, then they just have to accept the fact there's going to be some window of time where this is going to happen. So why not do it now at the beginning of the year after the Christmas holiday when people aren't really paying attention and everybody's kind of burned out It seems like a great time to kind of have a really bad thing happen. Do it right now, and then we'll get over it. And by summertime, which is when all fun business activity takes place in the gaming industry, it'll all be forgotten. I'm sure that's what they're hoping. That's an argument. I'm not saying that argument is valid.
Someone also noted that it was interesting that, I don't know if you noticed, but Hasbro announced Hasbro Pulse announced all their D&D figures. Super 7 announced their D&D reaction figure line. The Paramount Plus TV show was announced all at the same time that this hit, and that there was some speculation that they hoped that when this went down badly, all that other stuff would sort of cover up some of this hubbub, but I don't think it worked.
So. At least in my world, I just saw like one headline about there being a D&D TV show, and then that everything else on my timelines have been this.
This opportunity there, yeah.
I Am Error says, doesn't WotC's statement sounds like it was written by a PR firm and lots of doublespeak?
No, it's not.
It does not. I think a PR firm would do a much better job.
I was about to say, if it's written by a PR firm, it's a terrible one.
It sounds like somebody who doesn't really know exactly how the license works did it because, and I'm purely speculating, the communications team refused to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Yeah, but it does seem like it was put together like if there was going to be a big announcement, and then that was changed at 3:00 yesterday, and this was put out at like 9:00 or something like that. It seems like, oh my God, we've got to say something, and this is what was written overnight by perhaps, yes, somebody doesn't know what they were doing, not illegal, not a PR team.
Yeah.
I'm looking for questions. Lots of stuff going by. I'm not looking. I mean, lots of great comments. I see lots of great comments here. I was looking for questions. I see 2 super chats. So let's go to those. Walter. Oh wait, hold on. Let's go up. Here we go. A super sticker. Claudia McPhee, New Zealand. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Thank you very much. And then Walter Starr. Walter with the Open D&D logo right here. Walter says, what the hell did they think would happen when they pissed off thousands of people who are technologically astute and read 600-page rule books for fun?
Okay, I can tell you what they thought would happen. I can tell you what they hope would happen.
Okay.
What they hope would happen is that they would get a bunch of companies like Paizo and Cobalt and other companies of that size to agree to these licensing terms. And then they would make an announcement and say, look, we have a new open gaming license, and all these companies have decided to join us and come with us on our new adventure. That's what they hoped would happen.
And instead, everybody ostracized them and
formed the exact opposite. But look, what they wanted what Paizo got yesterday. That's what they wanted.
Yeah.
There's got to be some the PR section of that has got like Paizo stole their thunder and all that.
Yeah.
Harlequin 74 for $5. Thank you so much for the super chat. This whole post by Wizards of the Coast sounds like some bean counter exec trying to save his job and still not commit to anything.
Yeah, it's middle management speak. You can just imagine that there's somebody trying to write this thing, and they're trying to write it in a way that doesn't piss off people above them that have given them orders or are expecting certain things, and deals with what I believe is a fairly substantial revolt on the people below them, telling them they're making a horrendous mistake and trying to get them to stop. I mean, this message is full of tension. This is a message that is being pulled like taffy from the top and the bottom.
I can't help but feel like I hear that line from Iron Man from Jeff Bridges going, they built a license in a cave.
Right. Right. Exactly.
We've got a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they're tearing us apart.
Yeah. Yes. It's got to be unbelievably frustrating. Yeah.
The UFO man is a regular here and sent a super sticker for $1.99. Thank you so much, the UFO man. So it's great to see you. Pilgrim Media says, so the self leak was WotC Endgame.
I'm not convinced it was a self leak. I believe a number of companies were shown various documents in the lead up to this, and I don't know. I don't know anybody. I don't know any part of how it got out there. But assuming it was leaked from Wizards, I think, is a mistake. That's a bad assumption. It might be true, but it's a bad assumption.
Yeah, we don't know the source of the leak.
Yeah, that's right.
hopefully maybe we won't, probably better, but yeah. So, but some people speculated self-leak, but we don't know. I mean, it seems like my idea was that if it was a self-leak, if that strategy was, hey, let's leak something terrible and then set ourselves up for heroism, then come in with, no, this is, if they were setting themselves up for heroism, they would have responded a lot faster than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Christina McCall for $5 says, I've been playing and running the game since AD&D, spent thousands of dollars, recruited so many other people. I feel totally betrayed.
Yep. It's a part of your lifestyle. You identify yourself as a D&D player. It's who you are.
And I remember somebody, this is not original to me, but the idea about having older cousins or older brothers in the game to bring new people in and invite people. And if you drive off those people.
Yeah, Ryan, I want to ask you about that, because that to me is a huge problem, that the way this is sustained is people teaching other people. I think very few people probably just buy the box and learn to play.
Yeah. I mean, look, the size of the Dungeons and Dragons audience today is bigger than I ever imagined it could be. And that's because they've done a great job at new player acquisition. I mean, all kudos to Wizards and everybody else in that ecosystem who has worked on that problem down through the years, right? There are just more people playing tabletop role-playing games today than I ever thought was possible. So that all worked. But part of the infrastructure inside of that social network are people willing to teach other people how to play. It is incredibly hard to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons out of a box. Really hard. I sat on the other side of one-way mirrors in market research studios and watched people try to do that with Pokemon Junior, a game that was designed for 6 to 8-year-olds, and they had a hard time doing it. I cannot imagine how hard it is to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons without somebody teaching you how to play.
Severin asks, do you think, for $5, thank you so much. Thank you very much for the super chat. Also, one of the regulars on the channel. Do you think the situation was big enough to have consequences to those in higher position, board changes, etc., or do you feel it's business as usual?
It probably doesn't reach into Hasbro corporate, but there's no telling how high it could reach inside Wizards of the Coast.
Especially if we start seeing in Hasbro stock price, and if it this, I suppose this is the other side of saying, which we've talked about before, that do we really want everybody to be involved in our hobby and it to be mainstream popular? Well, you know, be careful what you wish for. So we're seeing that. On the other hand, if Wall Street does notice and this is terrible, that could be cutting the other direction. Yeah.
Yep.
We have Let's Reason Together has sent a $50 super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat. He says, you are killing me. Ryan gets source code. He knows the meat is on the SRD data. It's thin in a new OC, the ORC license that allows the greatest protection. It's this in a new ORC license that allows the greatest protection, and he knows, and also the greatest reuse. Linux admin since 1995. This is an easy problem to solve. Do you understand what's being said here?
I don't. Sorry. I wish for $50, I wish I could give you a better response, but I don't get it.
Yeah,
he's been
know.
Saying quite a bit. I think though what I've seen him saying, and I'm sure he'll correct us if I'm wrong, because I've watched his post flying by. He's been desperate for us to talk about this. That the reality is that the source code, the open source community has dealt with exactly these problems. But Ryan, I think, let me know what you think. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is that we do have a good license. We do have a good system. We have people who think they can override it, and they can't. And that's kind of the underlying problem right now, is that it's not so much that we don't have a good way to share this, it's that we've got people who think they can get rid of it.
I just want to reiterate, like, I'm really not focused on what happens next yet. I'm just not. I can't let myself be. There is going to be a what comes next, but I'm not there yet. So I'm not saying anything about what's coming next. I'm not trying to say it's good or bad or what. I'm just saying I'm not there yet. I want to try and win this battle right now to get Wizards to do the right thing about 1.0A. And then I'll have lots of things to say about what happens next.
I think that's what I was saying, is that 1.0A is a good license.
Yes, it is a good license. It's worked perfectly good for 22 years. Really good for 22
license. Yeah.
And look, in the end, it's not struggling because it turned out to be a bad license. There's no licensing issue here at all. None. Mm-hmm. So before we started, I mentioned that I always thought there could be problems with the open gaming license. Maybe we should talk about that. The open gaming license doesn't talk about patents. And patents are a dangerous thing. Patents are a whole different kind of intellectual property than copyrights or trademarks. And they're not discussed in the open gaming license at all. And in the software world, they basically had to revise all of the core software open source licenses to deal with the threat of patent litigation. There are patents in tabletop gaming. Wizards of the Coast had one, a huge one, a really important one on the Magic game mechanic. So in the other gaming industry, the gambling industry, they call themselves the gaming industry. I always laugh at them. They're the gambling industry. Patents are everywhere. Everything you see in a casino is patented. And before you can do any work in that space, you usually have to cross-license a big portfolio of patents. We don't have patents in tabletop industry that affect tabletop role-playing games, thankfully. And it's unlikely that will start. It could start, but it's unlikely it will start. But if we ever did have a patent problem, the open gaming license would not be a good defense against it. There's just nothing in the open gaming license about patents. So, like, that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of orthogonal thing. I'm using orthogonal because we're all gamers. That's something that could come from a direction completely outside of the vector that which the open gaming license is aimed that could have really done it damage. And I'm sure there's other things. But that didn't happen. Like, it didn't happen. It worked fine. It's been working fine for 22 years.
And when we were doing analysis earlier this week and trying to run down and document different things, I did. A lot of people in my comments were giving examples from the GPL, the general public license. And then, of course, you've talked about in other ones how this was inspired by that philosophy. And so I did go back and look at GPL version 1, because I thought, gee, if the language or something is used, we'll be able to document that. There's got to have been also case law or litigation or something like that, where because if that idea that it was built on, because it's building on the GPL and the source code, if there was some huge flaw on that, it's probable that it would have been found before then, because I didn't realize that the GPL, until I was looking into it, had started so long ago. I mean, that still had like a 20 or 30 year head start on the open gaming license.
That's right.
So,
yep.
And that's why I was also saying that if something happened to this,
something we invented, we built on the shoulders of giants. Absolutely, 100%. Would never claim that any part of the open gaming license or the concept of open gaming was original to us. Yeah, it's all based on stuff that came from open source software.
And so that's why I was also saying that if something happened here, it seems like it would back propagate to a whole bunch of other people who might really want to claw back something that was open, something, that the web runs on or something like that. Yep. And it just seems like no. So let's reason together. I hope that was a reasonable answer for that. I hope that, hope we addressed the concerns.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Building Persephone for £5 says, is there any coincidence that the former Microsoft executives are replaying the total embarrassment of Firefox and Linux?
You really have to wonder if a bunch of people who came from a culture who fought this battle and lost it 15, 20 years ago don't have the institutional knowledge to not fight it again. Like, I would actually expect people from Microsoft to not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, to use a D&D analogy. Like, they know better.
Yeah.
Okay. Minecraft Dungeon Minecraft Dungeon version 2. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for a $5 super chat. I wanted to thank Ryan and YouTubers for everything they are doing to help this community. Your succinct and clear, unbiased responses are amazing. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's things like this. It's like the kind of content that you're putting out here today is the kind of content the community needs to hear and understand these issues, because they're fairly complicated and there's a rich history here. And they need to know what's being fought over and why it matters to them. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do something like this.
Well, thank you for being here. And also, you impressed, I know, everybody. It seems like in the gaming community, when you appeared on the Roll for Combat, we're like, wow, this guy told us exactly what we need to know, exactly like they're talking about here, succinctly, unbiasedly, directly, well articulated, and all of that. And we're like, wow, that's what I was like.
I don't know. Not a normal day.
Thank you for having. I want to thank you for having me on this too, because the truth is that I hope that I am appropriately representing the thousands of folks out there who are developing stuff like me.
Absolutely.
And we're just the small folks trying to do something cool. And like someone put in here, it says, really, our position is just leave us alone. We just want to make our cool stuff, right? And not have you mess with it. And so thanks for having me on this, because generally our voices end up getting lost in this, and I appreciate it a lot.
Well, you're welcome, Mark. For those who might be new to the channel, our kind of philosophy here that I try to operate under is to always be constructive. I don't like endless negativity and stuff like that. So I like to be constructive. and focus on building things and things like that. So I hope that this is a constructive conversation that is being had here, and advancing the conversation in the Geekverse about this topic. So hopefully that is what we are doing. Abstract Tractor for 5 Canadian says, I've always imagined that that trust in companies is hard to earn and easy to lose. How much do you think consumer trust affects WotC's bottom line?
A lot. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. A huge amount. Thank you so much for the super chat. Jason A says, for $5, says, Critical Role. We haven't talked about them yet, which we can talk about them now, but we can also talk about them later. But let's address this question. Jason A says, Critical Role must feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. Is there anything they can say, or are they too intertwined with Wizard of the Coast?
I mean, I can't speak for those guys. I don't know Matt Mercer. I don't know his team. I would feel really badly to say something that wasn't true. So I won't say anything.
Yeah, that's another one that is difficult, because I know people. I mean, there has been a tweet that's come out, but I think you're probably right that they probably feel between a rock and a hard place, and they might really be. They could be really be legally, which is why they haven't said anything. So they probably do feel that way, I would guess, and they might actually be legally. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure that it's a hard. What they're going through is not easy.
Yep. And look, they're not the only ones. Like, let's be clear, there are lots and lots and lots of people that are facing those choices, and it is a tough time for them. And I really do feel for those people. Like, they have to make decisions that affect human beings' lives. It's not theoretical. It's not just about games. It's about people. And I really, really, really feel for those people.
I do see Let's Reason Together did say, I'm not sure if that was a thanks directed at us or not, but I just saw that come by. There's a lot of comments. So I hope that we addressed your comment. Mark J for $10. Thank you so much for the super chat, and thank you for being here. It says, WotC has been abusing and over monetizing Magic the Gathering for years. And at this point, I don't trust leadership. That leadership there has the fans at heart. The problem for them is D&D is it has fewer attack vectors, and OGL protects its fans.
Look, I kind of disagree, Mark. Like, the OGL's not protecting them from making money from Dungeons and Dragons. It's not. Like, there's so many things they could do with Dungeons and Dragons to make money that have nothing to do with the open gaming license. They've done some of those things. They're probably going to do more in the future, but the OGL is not a part of that. Like, it's not stopping them from monetizing their brands.
And I am the most casual Magic the Gathering player either. I've heard there's been terrible, so I don't really know what's going over there. I've heard that there was stuff that flew on, which is off topic for here, but I heard there's a bunch of stuff over there in that community, and now this is coming over here. Jacob Hart for $5 says, Ryan, what's your take on the Critical Role silence? I think we addressed that. We just don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Let's Reason Together. Thank you. Send a $1 super chat. Thank you very much. The Okota Cat says, would you have been what would have been the smart move for Wizards of the Coast? Well, when?
Exactly.
And then we'll go on to the next topic. Like, what would have been the smart move this morning? Well, the smart move would have said exactly what Paizo said. That would be the smart move. That was the smart move yesterday. That was the smart move a week ago. Was the smart move this morning. That should be the smart move tomorrow morning.
Yeah, there's only one thing that's going to make the pain stop. It must clearly declare that they do not intend to be authorized, and they can't revoke that license. That's the only thing that will stop the pain at this point. Now, what should they have done 6 months ago if they really wanted to engage in this process? I could give you a roadmap. If Wizards wants to hire me to tell them what they should have done, I'd be happy to take their pay to tell them. It's too late to do that now. Now they have to have a whole new strategy. They have a completely different problem than they had 6 months ago.
Okay, so let's say where the stream to go, because I also want to let people know what's coming, and then also our guests may need to leave. But let me say I've got 3 things here. So after this, now, because we don't have to stay for those, but this is the topics for the audience and things like that, because I'll stay, because these are the topics that I want to address, but that doesn't mean that our guests can. But this is where we're going. Is the other thing that happened today was the Bob Tarantino interview. So after that release this afternoon, the Bob Tarantino, and if you don't know who that is, he is the lawyer who wrote his PhD dissertation on the OGL, and he was on Roll for Combat today. And of course, I broke down the dissertation. We read through not all 300 pages, 300-page dissertation, not all 300 pages were relevant to what we were doing, but a lot of the pages were. So if you really want to know what is inside that dissertation, I also clipped it here on the channel. So you can go through all the clips on the topic that you are most interested in. So I was very interested to know what he had to say in that interview, and I took some notes. I didn't learn as much new stuff for that. So if you are not familiar with that topic at all, watch that interview on Roll for Combat, or go through the dissertation stuff if you are more academically inclined and just like reading people's dissertations here on this channel. But I did come up with some notes, and a lot of people from the channel are also more familiar with those anyway. But I did come up with some issues that I thought he brought up that had not been addressed. There was the critical role. I tell you what, I brought up the critical role statement. We talked about critical role because there isn't much to say, but they did put out a statement. So that did happen today. So we should just bring that up because we were talking about critical role. So here they did put something out. So just so that this was the last kind of thing that I saw that happened today. This was the tweet. From all of us at Critical Role. Critical Role has always supported creators and game developers in the tabletop space. We stand by our industry peers, as well as anyone who takes a risk creating a new system or developing an original idea. The beauty of gaming comes from the opportunity to share inclusive, diverse, and compelling stories from a wide spectrum of creators. That's exactly why we launched our own game publishing company a few years ago, because we believe that broadening the field of creators boosts the entire industry. The success that we have experienced is thanks to the passion and interest of the greater tabletop community, and we commit to fostering an environment that allows everyone the opportunity to easily share the stories that they wish to tell.
Yeah, it's kind of a non-statement statement.
Yeah, it kind of is, but it seems oriented in one direction. I think, but who knows? I mean, I don't know. So that is what they have said. But I mean, I guess people will read into whatever it is that they want to read into that, and I think they are in Twitter. There's probably a battle going on Twitter about exactly what this means.
Yeah. Yes. It's like a Zen koan.
Right. So that does take care of Critical Role. How much time do y'all have?
I mean, I could probably go another 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, well then I tell you what we'll do is we'll not do. I'll do the Bob Tarantino interview after that and go through my points, because I've got I think a couple of other questions for Ryan here that we didn't get to that I haven't seen addressed elsewhere. So okay, so here's a question for you. I'll take this down in 15 minutes. I'll try to keep track of the time so we're not running over on your time.
Not a hard stop.
So you said that most things that happened with the OGL did not surprise you.
Yeah.
There were a few things that did, but you said most things didn't surprise you. But in Bob's dissertation, when he's documenting the history of the OGL, he makes a hard break between the intended use of the OGL in conjunction with the D20 license, which we have not, and the YouTube community in general, not talked that much about at all. So we can talk about that, but he makes a clear epic distinction between use as intended and then a realization that, hey, we can use the OGL without the D20 license and create our own games. Do you want to talk about the relationship between the OGL and the D20 license and what was being thought of at that time? And was that something a surprise? Was that break as big a break for you as it seems like Bob implies it is in his history when he was documenting it?
Okay, so let's talk about the D20 system trademark license, the STL. There's too many acronyms in this conversation, so I'll just call it the D20 trademark license.
Okay.
Okay, so the Open Gaming License, the OGL, it prohibits you from using product identity unless you have the explicit permission of the owner of the product identity. Product identity is anything that the person who uses the OGL says it is. And the intention was to allow you to clearly indicate all kind of things that are brands and trademarks and intellectual property that you do not want to have become enmeshed with the open game content requirements of the Open Gaming License. So that's how you can make the One Ring role-playing game. which uses the game mechanics from 5th edition and the world of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Obviously, you can't license Sauron and Gandalf and the One Ring to anybody who wants to use it forever for free. That's impossible. The Tolkien estate would never stand for that. The open gaming license is unique in the open source world in that it envisions the idea that you will mix open content and closed content in the same work in a way that allows people to both understand what is open and understand what is closed. That is something that most open source computer licenses don't do. The LGPL, the quote unquote lesser general public license from the Free Software Foundation, is designed to do half of that. It's designed to allow you to mix closed source and open source projects while forcing you to identify what part of it is open source. But it doesn't say anything about the closed source. The open gaming license deals with both at the same time. So that's important. In the United States, it is legal to indicate compatibility with a trademark if you are actually compatible with the trademark. It's legal. So under long-standing law, I could write a product and say, this product is compatible with Dungeons and Dragons. If it was compatible with Dungeons and Dragons. The OGL says you can't do that because Wizards of the Coast has identified Dungeons and Dragons as product identity. If you want to indicate compatibility with it, you need their permission, and Wizards isn't giving you that permission. Well, we did something in addition to the OGL, which was called the D20 System Trademark License. And the purpose of that was to create a brand bridge between content licensed in the open gaming license and Dungeons and Dragons. And we didn't want to create a licensing regime for the trademarks of Dungeons and Dragons for some of the reasons we talked about earlier about dealing with content that is awful and that you don't want to touch. We didn't want somebody to publish the Dungeons and Dragons book of racism or the Dungeons and Dragons book of fascism. Like, we didn't want that. But we did want to be able for people to be able to connect the work that they had done with open gaming content to D&D. So we created a brand out of nothing in the middle called the D20 System. And we made a little logo for the D20 System. And we said, if you follow these rules and accept this license, the D20 System trademark license, you can use this trademark on your products that have open game content in them. And we will put that same logo on the D20 products that we're publishing, like Dungeons and Dragons. So if somebody goes into a store and sees that D20 logo, they're going to have some assumption that there's a relationship between the thing that you published and Dungeons and Dragons. But nobody has to say compatible with Dungeons and Dragons. They just have to say they're compatible with the D20 system. That worked great. Like, it solved a lot of problems. We never had an issue with the press contacting us and saying, oh my God, I can't believe you're involved with this horrible, awful thing. And it was very clear to most consumers what that D20 logo meant soon after it became public.
And they figured it out. Didn't have to make a separate one and try to figure out how to make them look similar. And
exactly. Okay, so there's a lot of history between the D20 trademark. It only lasted for about 5 years. I'm not exactly sure when Wizards finally ended the trademark license, but it was a limited time thing. It served its purpose, I think. And it's a story as interesting in some ways as the whole open gaming license. And maybe when this kerfluffle is all done, we'll talk about that at some point because it's interesting. But it isn't really relevant to the question of, can the open gaming license be used with other games? So now I want to go back to that point. When we were developing that license, there were already open source licenses being used for tabletop role-playing games. The Fudge game was created by a guy named Stephen O'Sullivan, and he wrote a license that was like an open source license for Fudge. In my opinion, that license had an issue. And the issue was that you had to send him copies of your work and he would pre-approve them before you could indicate that they had been, before you could publish them and indicate they were compatible with Fudge. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but I don't feel like it's true to the spirit of open source, which is there shouldn't be reviews and approvals. It also would be impossible for Wizards of the Coast to use because we would never be able to review and approve all the stuff that potentially could come down the pipe. But that license existed long before the open gaming license. When we announced we were doing the open gaming license, but before we had published the first draft of it, another company called Dominion Games, which was publishing a fantasy role-playing game, rushed ahead, wrote their own license, and published their game with that license. So there was a Dominion Games license available for people to look at that was being used as the licensing engine for a role-playing game before the Open Gaming License was used to license Dungeons and Dragons. It didn't get a lot of traction, but it did exist. There were plenty of people who wanted to use various open source software licenses for role-playing game products, and they tried. The Apache license and the BSD license, which are open source software license you can look into, are pretty generic, and they don't really have to be used with software. The GPL and the LGPL are pretty software specific. They could probably be used for anything, but they're very software specific. So there were attempts to do this. And as soon as we started talking about doing the Open Gaming License, there was a lot of buzz, a lot of discussion about how this could be done. What should the license terms be? Like, there was lots of people that were trying to do it, right? There was a lot of, we're going to go and do our own license. It's going to be awesome. So there was a ton of people who had that idea. So it was obvious from the very beginning that the Open Gaming License, in order to be fit for purpose, could not be a license for Dungeons and Dragons. It had to be a license for open gaming in general, because it was obvious that there was a demand for this type of system, this licensing regime. And that if we did a good job, and if the content we licensed with it, Dungeons and Dragons, was sufficient to kickstart an actual thriving community of users of that open game content, there would obviously there would be other games that use the same license. There would be new trees in the forest. And there were very quickly. Like, I'm not sure what the very first game is that was released under the Open Game License that was not a derivative of the Dungeons and Dragons system reference document, but I wouldn't be surprised if it took less than 6 months. Like, it was from the get-go, it was obvious it was going to happen. And when we were creating those licenses, I ran a mailing list. I created this entity called the Open Gaming Foundation, which is, it's not a corporation. It's just an idea. It's a website. And the Open Gaming Foundation operated a mailing list called OGFL and OGF D20L. OGFL was for discussions of the Open Gaming License, and OGF D20L was for discussions of the system trademark license for the D20 logo. The participants of OGFL who are talking about the Open Gaming License had lots of time to talk about how to do it, what they wanted, what kind of terms were acceptable, unacceptable, what language should be used, all the things Wizards of the Coast should have done if they wanted to revise the license. And there were people on that list who were talking about doing their own games under that license from almost the very first day. So I will tell you, as the guy who was there, it was absolutely always intended to be a license for more than just Dungeons and Dragons. No question. And it was very quickly.
Well, so that is very interesting to me, because I remember seeing all the D20 modules and stuff like that. I remember all of that time when all of a sudden they were everywhere. And then, then it wasn't. And then the idea that, they come later. But I think it's really interesting to know that right away, people were using that, and you were anticipating whole new games to be built from that and knew that was going to happen. So yep. There might have been a sea shift in terms of the volume of publishing, but yes, that genesis of the idea wasn't something that 3 years later somebody went, hey, wait a minute.
I think that's accurate. Yeah. Okay. The actual execution of doing it trailed the idea of doing it by quite a bit, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, it takes a little bit more to develop the whole system too. Yeah. So, I mean, if there was
see if it was going to work. I mean, who blames you? Like, you're going to take your life's work, your new role-playing game, and just risk it? Why? Wait and find out. And they did. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is an important hole, I think, needed to be filled. That gap needed to be filled. Let me skip this. Why? I wasn't clear on this when Rob was talking about. Why did Wizards of the Coast copyright the OGL? Why is that statement of Wizards of the Coast copyright there?
Okay, so it's like double redundancy. We didn't want anybody to take the Open Gaming License, change some terms in it in ways we didn't like, publish their version of the Open Gaming License, and confuse the market into believing that there were more than one way to use that license. And so by asserting a copyright on that license, it locks it in place and says, you can't change this license. You can't change the text of this license without getting sued by Wizards of the Coast. It's not necessary. It's absolutely not necessary. But it's just another layer of redundancy to say, don't mess with this.
Okay, all right. So that's because Bob was saying that it seemed weird to him that, okay, in order to use this license, you have to copy it. You have to put it in your book.
That's
But
right.
by the way, this is copyright us.
That's
So,
right. And permission is
like,
granted to use it in that way in your book.
right, you have to be able to copy it. So it wouldn't make sense for them wizards to say, "Hey, you're violating my copyright because you published like." So it's to make sure that nobody.
I mean,
that
you can
nobody-
imagine somebody says, I hate this thing about the open gaming license. I'm going to take the text, I'm going to change a little bit of it, I'm going to publish it. And then somebody else says, oh, that's the open gaming license. I'm going to start using that on my products. And now we're in the position of saying, whoa, wait, no. No, there's the Wizards open gaming license, and then there's this other thing. No, it's a nightmare. And trust me, in the beginning, there were people who wanted to believe that either it was the devil or it was God. Like they wanted it to be as bad as it could possibly be, or they wanted it to be way better than it was. And they would intentionally misunderstand the license to get to the end that they wanted. So copywriting that license was a way of making it harder to copy it and create confusion.
That makes sense. Okay. So another thing that Bob brought up, which we have talked about, we being the YouTube community and things like that, being different international laws and stuff.
Yeah.
And there is no geographic legal jurisdiction of the OGL.
Yeah.
Was that thought about? Was it deliberately removed? What is the thinking there about what legal system then or jurisdiction would resolve the OGL?
Yeah. The first thing is that it's probably not enforceable. There are jurisdictions that will claim universal jurisdiction, whether you tell them you can or cannot. And so even if we had said that, it is possible that there would have been suits filed in places other than where we said it had to be adjudicated, because the law in that area allowed you to do that. The other thing is, and here we go back to the question of the trees in the forest. Maybe the people that were going to sue each other didn't live anywhere near Renton, Washington in the United States. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was a French publisher suing a German publisher, and they wanted to have that suit adjudicated in a European court. Would they have to fly to Renton and deal with the Ninth Circuit of the U.S. Court of Appeals and the law that applies to the United States for a controversy that was only applicable in the European Union? That doesn't make any sense. So the law knows how to deal with this. Like this is not something you have to write into a contract. You write it into a contract when you're trying to control the venue, but you don't have to. The law knows what to do. There's all kind of processes that determine where a case can be held. If Wizards was suing people, Wizards would sue them in Renton in the Ninth Circuit or in some other jurisdiction that Hasbro operated in that was favorable to it. And we would win. Like we would get the case heard there. Unless we were going up against some monster huge mega corporation, we'd win. We'd get the venue we wanted. So we didn't have to put it in the license. And everybody else could sue, if they had to sue, in a venue that was convenient to them. Unless they were suing us, in which case it would be the venue that we liked. So there was no need to put a venue in the contract.
That's also very interesting, because I was thinking about it when I was watching that clip in the context of somebody in a legal battle with Wizards, or Wizards in a legal battle with somebody else. But yeah, it could be any arbitrary entities anywhere on the planet which are involved with one another. Mm-hmm. It's Wizards would not have to be a party in any lawsuit regarding the OGL at all.
That's right. We tried to community proof it. Like we tried to make it generic. It's not a Wizards of the Coast license. It's not for licensing Wizards of the Coast stuff.
Well, I think this has been extremely insightful. I hope the community has felt that way. Let me see if there's a couple of other super chats that have gone by to see what people are saying. Minecraft Dragodon version 2, $5. Thank you very much again for the next super chat. Thank you. Instant communication is counter information, and utility within the community seem to be extremely important. Instant communication to counter misinformation, and unity within the community seems to be extremely important. What further steps can be taken to help?
Just keep talking to each other. Just stay active. Keep using that hashtag. Hashtag OGL. Like Wizards is paying attention. They are changing direction. They are hearing these voices. So keep talking. It is working.
There is, like, different places. There is a Defend the OGL Discord server, just as far as like the community, and I've seen that's really blown up. I can invite people to that. Let me I'll drop that in the chat. So if you are looking for the Defend the OGL Discord server, that is in the chat now as well.
Cool.
Let me see if there are any other super chats. Pilgrim Media, $2. Thank you very much. Said, would WotC do that amount of litigation with 1.1?
Who knows?
To get it made, or to I think also the point that has been brought up about the number of obligations they're bringing upon themselves to try to litigate is also a very interesting point to this. They think like was it you on the other stream that was like, this is all pain. It seems to be all pain for everyone, like all everyone, pain. All pain. Well, okay. I'll start with Mark and then let Ryan conclude. Mark, do you want to give any final thoughts that you might have? I'm going to stay on the stream. I'm actually, when we conclude here, I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to return to talk about Bob Tarantino's dissertation and the items that I thought about it, and that the community might be interested in after having been through the dissertation online. So we'll conclude with Mark and Ryan in just a few minutes here, and then I will take a quick break and then conclude with that topic. And I can also talk with people in the chat and answer questions and things like that for a little while. Not 7 hours, but a little while longer. I will go a little while longer. But Mark, do you want to conclude here and concluding thoughts, but then also let everybody know what you're doing and where to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, thanks for having us on here, because this, I think, is so many questions and so much confusion right now that us having the time to talk about it is really important. So I think the main thing is I want to just say it's so nice to see the things that make gaming awesome coming through in this discussion, where people are following each other, backing each other, saying, hey, go out and buy this person's books in case they go away. I mean, it's just super cool to see all that. And I hope that we can keep doing positive things together despite the weirdness of all of this. In terms of the things that I'm doing right now, I really want to encourage people. I wouldn't be doing my job for the other people working on this. Check out coolnamerpg.com. That's where we're building that system. We announced Steve Long as our first consulting designer, and a bunch more are going to be coming in. And from there, you can also find links to our setting books, The World of Ataltis, and things like that as well. So please check it out. And again, thanks for having on the show tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being here. I think this has been fantastic. Ryan, do you want to conclude as well? Let everybody know. But also, we did have a question that came by that I think was a good one. That people, which is a light topic to end on, which is a good one. What games are you currently playing right now, or RPGs, or what kind of stuff are you related to? Are you having fun in with the tabletop game side of things? Are you playing any RPGs right now?
It's funny. For totally unrelated reasons, over the Christmas break, I played Baldur's Gate 3, and I have been playing Wrath of the Righteous, the CRPGs, computer RPG games. One, Baldur's Gate 3 is a 5th edition derived game, and Wrath of the Righteous is a Pathfinder derived game. So yeah, weirdly, recently I've spent dumb numbers of hours playing those two games. So I actually have kind of been playing a lot of role-playing lately. I'll be honest, I don't have a regular role-playing game group, and I have not played role-playing games regularly in a long time. I turned my life, hobby, and my passion into a business, and that changes your relationship to your hobby. You never kind of can go back. It's always going to be a business forever after that point. So I game for a hobby in categories other than role-playing. I thank you. My backdrop here is a bunch of games that my company publishes, the AEG. We love those games. If you just look for AEG games, you'll probably really enjoy them. I have the great fortune to be involved with a local community of people who play a lot of board games. So I get a chance to play a lot of really cool stuff. I would say right now, my number one game is Root from Leader. If you haven't played Root, I definitely suggest you check it out. It's an amazing gaming experience. And I would say my top recent game is a game called Flamecraft, which is fantastic. It's great for players of all ages. I highly recommend it. So yeah, I get to play a lot of games, and I am a gamer. I just don't play a lot of role-playing games anymore. I wanted to mention, in addition to that free ad, I have a petition on change.org. The name of the petition is Hasbro please take no action regarding the Open Gaming License V1.0A. And I would appreciate every person who signs that. It has been signed by 12,000 people. And the purpose of that petition is to make people inside Wizards of the Coast who are fighting the good fight know that we have their back and we're producing energy and positive momentum to help them. And if that petition raises awareness of this issue high enough so that some Hasbro shareholders, some Hasbro stakeholders get involved and start to put pressure on that company to do the right thing, it will be a success. So I highly encourage and I ask you to sign that petition and help drive that number higher. Every signature is a message telling Hasbro to make an announcement that they will not attempt to deauthorize, revoke that license. It is critically important that that happens.
I put that link in the chat. I found it. It is in the chat. And then I also dropped it into the D&D channel of the Ravenkeep Discord. So if you're there, you can also find it there. So yes, please do sign up there.
That's very kind. I really appreciate it.
Ryan, Mark, thank you so much for being here. I'll be in touch with you guys afterwards. I'm about to keep, I'm going to keep streaming, but I will be in touch with both of you. If there's anything I can do to help you, Ryan, or you, Mark, please let me know. I'm
absolutely
always here sitting in the office.
And thank you to the whatever 500 plus people that are watching us live.
Yeah,
Matt, hit the subscribe button.
Please do hit the like, subscribe button. I would love to have you here. I hope that it has been a beneficial conversation for everybody. I suppose if 500 people have come and watched, that it has been. I hope that it was a constructive addition to the conversation and that we addressed topics that have not been addressed. I think we did. That was my goal too, to kind of cleanly and rationally go through this, but also address things that had not been addressed. So thank you so much, guys.
Hey,
thank you so much. I'm going to go to the break screen, but I'll be back. I'll be back in like 30 seconds or something like that, everybody.
All right. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
All right. Hello, everybody. And thank you for still being here. Thank you for continuing to hang out. I'm not going to go a tremendous amount longer, but I do want to take an opportunity to talk to other people in the chat if you have questions. And I do want to put some additional notes out on what I thought about the interview with Bob Tarantino, who was the author of the dissertation on the OGL, which we looked at extensively on this channel, so that we can talk about that. I'm very grateful for Ryan Dancey taking time to be on the channel tonight. Very grateful, and that I think he answered the questions that I had. So I got all the questions that I had addressed. And I think that I hope that you guys did in the round. I know I couldn't get to everybody. I know I couldn't get to everybody, and I'm sorry about that. But at least we got through the super chats and then some other questions as well. So that was, I hope that it was a productive conversation. I am going to put another marker in the comments here, just so I know where the break is. Break. So I can just start right there. But I hope everyone has enjoyed it. Okay. Let's say what I did clip that interview. I clipped out sections of it so that it could be played, so that we could actually play them and listen to them. And I was wondering if we needed to play and listen to them, especially if Mark and Ryan were with us, because they may not have been able to see it. So I could do that, but on the other hand, maybe we just talk about them. It's not all that much. I can give you markers to go and watch. If you have not, if you're not familiar with that dissertation and what was going on there, I do recommend that you watch the interview with him, and you're interested in knowing. I do recommend the conversation with the interview that was just done today on Roll for Combat with Bob Tarantino. That gives you the overview. That gives you the overview of what was going on. Then if you want more, well, then my channel's got the whole dissertation. Let me see what people are saying after the break here. Bruce O'Malley says, thanks, it was a great interview. Well, you're very welcome. I'm glad you thought so. I am very glad you thought so. That was the goal. Bithrax the Boundless says, one thing that has come out as a good thing of this whole OGL debacle is I found so many more great nerdy creators like you and several others who stand with Open D&D and Open RPG. Me too. You know, a lot of people have said that. Thank you so much. I'm glad you found me, and I'm glad that to have you. I've only been live streaming regularly for like 2 months, so yeah, I'm kind of new at all this. I've been making YouTube videos for years, but the live streaming thing is still very new to this. But I've also connected with creators that I didn't know were out there as well. So that has been that network effect, that strengthening of the whole tabletop community and RPG network. Definitely been a great thing. Draco, oh, good to see you. Good to see you. Another channel regular. Thanks for the stream. Much appreciated. Got to go, but catch you later. So lots of people saying great interview. I'm so glad. All right. I'm glad that people enjoyed that. Oh, and Lou. Oh, here's Lou. Only caught the end. Well, you should go back. If you are just coming in, and you're wondering why it's just me sitting here, if a lot of people, if new people are coming in, we had our interview with Ryan Dancey, Ryan Dancey, and then Mark Tassin as well. And we just concluded that. And I'm just providing some additional notes here at the end. So yes, definitely. Just dropped in. Well, go. Oh, hey, Wizards Tower just dropped in. Yeah. So they just left a few minutes ago. I'm going to talk about the dissertation here, but if you want to listen to them, definitely earlier in the stream. We made CNBC. Oh, that's good news. Oh, hit the wrong button. Open D&D says we made CNBC. That's fantastic. I was wondering when mass media, however you want to describe the channels like that. Of course, it's not like the internet isn't mass media, but the general media would pick up on it, because I figured it has to, with the amount of money that this is making for Wizards of the Coast, which means for Hasbro, it's going to be a thing. If anybody has a link to that, we'll put it in the Discord server. I want to watch that later. I can probably, if it's like a YouTube clips or something like that of mass media stuff, I would like to know. I would like to know what effect we are having outside in that kind of stuff like that. Yeah, me too. Building Persephone says, I'm really looking forward to checking out the ORC in February. I am too, and also potentially building for Pathfinder. We do RPG development here, but we also explore other games. One of my primary interests on this channel is world building. I really want to build out worlds and then put rules to them. So I'm going to look at Pathfinder as well. The Guardian did an article. The Building Persephone says the Guardian did an article today as well. What's the Discord link? Here, let me. It is in the chat. Excuse me, not in the chat. I'll put it in the chat. Well, it is in the chat, but it's in the description. If you look in the description, it's there, but it's also here now. Discord link in the chat. Okay. Let me just see here the Bob interview. So my first note is that Bob did bring up the idea that game mechanics can't be the idea that game mechanics can't be copyrighted originated when games were much simpler. And that did get addressed tonight, that this is something that apparently hasn't been really tested in court. We're all kind of going off of this idea, and the community has adopted it, embraced it, and it's the way that we are all operating, that your game mechanic cannot be copyrighted. But your game mechanic cannot be copyrighted, but of course your expression can. And so the philosophy of the community seems to be, well, then let me write up an expression. I'll write up the expression for the rules mechanics that can be copyrighted. And then you can either keep the copyright yourself, or you could do something like distribute it with an open license. And I did see on Twitter today, which I believe is an incorrect statement. It was saying that there's the belief that the OGL does not give you a license to something that you could not use already. And this is where it gets complicated, and that the game mechanics, of course, cannot, or I say of course, but as we are all operating, the game mechanics cannot be copyrighted, and that is something that has come down through the court system, albeit from a day where games were much simpler, but nonetheless, because you can't copyright processes and all of this stuff for reasons that are in that dissertation. If you want to know more about that, it's in that dissertation. He goes through it all. And I when I was reading through the dissertation, I went through it because I was going through his dissertation. But that if we were to test that, the result might be unknown. If instead of bringing somebody Monopoly mechanics in a court, if we brought them the Dungeons and Dragons rule book, maybe the result might be unknown. But it's unknown in both directions. Oh, so the idea, though, is unknown in both directions. For instance, do you really want to challenge that? Because it could be the case that's you can't copyright that. That's a game mechanic that stands. The other option would be that, oh, yes, all of a sudden you can. And so, but because that would be a huge unknown. Would a court even take that? But nonetheless, this idea is long-standing in the gaming community that the mechanics cannot be copyrighted. But that the object, the jural object, as the Tarantino dissertation was using in its terminology, that is being licensed must be copyrightable. That if it wasn't copyrightable, you wouldn't need a license anyway. And so I think it's why people say that, oh, the OGL doesn't give you rights to anything that you don't already have access to, is incorrect. Because even though it may be possible that you could use those mechanics, and because they are not copyrightable, and you probably could, and as Ryan Dancey has been saying, if you are not operating under the OGL, in typical trademark situations, you're even allowed to claim that you are compatible with a particular trademark. You can't when you publish under the OGL. That's something that actually protects Wizards property, Wizards D&D property. But the OGL does give you access to something. When it came, it gave you access to the SRD, and the SRD is absolutely copyrightable. that if you write out the SRD, the 5th edition or the 3rd edition or the 3.5 edition SRD, those things could be copyrighted. And that's what gives you, and the OGL is the legal instrument which gives you access to the SRD, because it gives you the access to the expression of all those mechanics. Let's not only use the same mechanics, but let's all use the same expression of those mechanics. Ryan used the term templating in other streams to make sure that rules are consistent. So, every time you encounter them, you use the same phraseology. This makes for a better game. That way you don't have multiple ways for the same rule to be written. That causes a whole bunch of confusion when you're trying to play games. So let's not only use the same mechanics, let's use the same expression of those mechanics. Here you're welcome to use the SRD because you have the OGL. And I do like the metaphor here of the entire system being like a forest, because everything is not connected. The SRD is just a document. It is this instrument that can be used to license things. You've got this whole big forest that goes around. And sure, the big tree in the middle of the forest, the one that started first too, which is what gave the OGL its value, was that it was connected to the, in that case, in that time, 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons SRD. Because it doesn't matter how good your license is. Man, this is just a fantastic license. This license is just fantastic. That doesn't matter. That if it's not connected to something of value, if it's not actually licensing something of value. So that is... that's what gave it value in the beginning, and that's what planted perhaps I would say definitely the largest tree, but not the only tree in the forest. Paizo's Pathfinder is another major tree in the forest, according to their 2nd edition, a new independent tree that has sprung up, and major tree, according to Paizo's announcement. But then, of course, there are tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of all these other little trees that are all around the forest as well. So he brought that up. We did talk about that. And so I think that leads into this conversation right here. There's more on that. The second note that I had is that it goes back to the idea or issue sometimes with experts, because it would be perfect if, we could just get a definitive answer from all legal experts, right? And they all derived the exact same conclusion. Because, hey, we spend a lot of money in our society, a lot of time and money in our society to educate lawyers, and not only just educate lawyers, but educate lawyers that are specialists in IP law. And so this is an IP law problem. So wouldn't it be great just go to them and then they just deliver to you to the answer? And they don't do that. So experts in that subject do come to different conclusions, of course. And sometimes a single expert will come to multiple conclusions themselves. Right, to further complicate things. Sometimes a single expert will give you more than one opinion. There's some kind of joke about that like, you put two, we'll say legal experts in a room. How many different opinions on subjects you got? At least 3. So he did say, Bob did not directly say, he said that he could come up with many arguments as to why the OGL could not be revoked. He did say that on the stream, and we're talking about, if you're just coming in, this was the Roll to Win combat stream that was earlier today with Bob Tarantino. So you can watch that. So he said that he did not deliberately say directly that the OGL cannot be revoked, but he said I can come up with many arguments for why it cannot be revoked. But he did say that he could come up with some reasons why maybe it could be. I would be interested academically to know what those reasons are in order to hear all that. Because that's the other side. He did not elaborate on that in the stream. He did not elaborate on that. But he also in typical, like, let's say, PhD fashion, and I can say that because I'm also a PhD fashion, specifically in the philosophical side of things, I would say, which is, the law has that domain as well. He was also saying that we need to understand what exactly it means to revoke the OGL anyway, and that he doesn't really even understand that question. Like, what would it even mean to revoke it? Maybe that you have to answer that question. That's when you ask philosophers. That's the way they answer questions. You ask them a question, they ask you a question back, right? So that's a classic kind of philosophical thing. Can you revoke the OGL? Return answer, well, what would it mean? What would it really mean to revoke the OGL anyway? Is that an answer? Well, it's the kind of answer we got here, but I think it's important because if you're like, as we talked about on the stream, what would that mean? Like there are people who are completely independent of Wizards of the Coast using the OGL, not the SRD, because they're two different things. The OGL is the legal instrument. So what would that even mean? I mean, they're completely disconnected from Wizards of the Coast anyway. And maybe he was saying there's some kind of way, maybe theoretically or hypothetically, that even if you said, well, this is not connected to D&D anymore or something like that, does that even, it sounded to me like he was saying it's not really even a sensical question. You know, okay, that we, in order to make the statement, like, can I revoke the OGL, we would really have to get down into the weeds about what exactly that would mean anyway. And as we talked about on this stream, the OGL has grown beyond its creators by design, you know, given out to the world, and now it's grown beyond its creators. It's a document that's out there for anybody to use. So he was saying that the revocation of the OGL in a certain sense doesn't even make sense anyway. I wonder if he would talk to me. I wonder if Bob would come on the show. If so, we could ask him these questions directly. He was apparently aware. He said that he did see some guy who was reading his dissertation online. So yes, I am some guy. So he didn't know I did it. He also addressed the fact he did talk about Creative Commons. Let me go to we want to talk about Creative Commons licenses because we've talked about the Creative Commons licenses on this channel as well. Let me go to the chat and see what's going on there. See if there's something to bring up there. But he brought up the topic of Creative Commons licenses and why they were unsuitable for RPGs. And he gave different reasons than Ryan did. But let me scroll down here in the chat. Oh, Follow Me and Die. Follow Me and Die says, question, why doesn't WotC hire someone who understands the RPG community and how to communicate with them and what they want to do? Well, I don't know. I mean, it seems like they desperately need it. Joseph Carter says, #orc, #orc, #orc. And Follow Me and Die says, a new license separate from the OGL makes more sense for one D&D than wasting all the time and effort. Yeah, I mean, time and effort they have on the OGL 1.0. Yeah, if they want something else for one D&D, and none of us that I know of and who have been talking about this are saying something that this has to be something that's applied to one D&D, it absolutely does not. They can come up with a new license and go and do whatever they want with one D&D or 6th edition or whatever else. I haven't played Root. And now I'm curious. Do I have Root? I don't see Root. I don't think I have Root. I think I saw it played. I think I saw it played at Gen Con. No, Ryan is not. Both Ryan and Mark headed out. Yep. They hid the unsubscribe button? Lou is saying that. Now, I heard it crashed, and there was some speculation in that moment that, oh my God, they actually stopped, took away the ability to unsubscribe. But do we have confirmation that they hid the unsubscribe button, making it more difficult right after the controversial from D&D Beyond, holding my money hostage and coercing me to stay subscribed? That is also pretty low. Yeah, I would agree with Lou that if it's pretty. I always appreciate it when companies make it very easy to unsubscribe, so you can actually find it. But it's a low tactic anyway to not do that. Oh, Rick Arrow 1776 says, I've been very impressed with this channel since I found you last night. I just subscribed. Well, thank you very much, Rick. It is great to have you. Pan brings up a question. I don't know the answer to this question, but we should check this out because Modifius, we went over their D20 system a few days ago. Modifius says their D20 system is trademarked, so they mean the logo only and not the system. Yeah, it's trademarked. It's trademarked. I bet, I don't know, but my guess would be then 2D20 is a trademark. That would be my guess. The Nose Plays. Regular here on the channel. Good stuff, Heath. I'm very disappointed in WotC leadership after getting all the info. Yeah, they have not been coming through here. Alex says, did I find the OGL 2.0 earlier? No, I never did. I was watching the stream of Discourse Minis. So I watched that after my stream. I showered and was trying to cook some lunch, and I was listening to, or actually it was breakfast, but around lunch, and I was trying to listen to that stream. So it doesn't seem like that I have been able to find or was told by listening to all the streams that I listened to today, which was hers, and then also Roll to Win Combat. I never found any kind of leak of the OGL 2.0. Now, there might be out there. It might not be a public leak, but I was never able to find that. It seems that what they had, oh no, first there was the FAQ. So there was the FAQ thing. So she says she was reading, but she never displayed on the screen something from OGL 2.0. So I never found that. There wasn't anything that I had. It's not been sent to me. She was apparently reading something from it, but I don't know anything about that, about its legitimacy as a leak or anything like that. She didn't show it because she was concerned about some kind of identifying document or mark being on the document that might identify the leaker. So no, I don't know anything about that. I didn't find it. Well, you know, if they'd like to sit down, I would be happy to do that. Captain Nolan says, comment, Creative Commons does not allow you to protect some IP and release other IP in the same document game. OGL allows you to do ID, some as IP and other as OGL. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about that because that is a great lead in, Captain Nolan. So originally, because we had looked at Creative Commons on the channel and we had looked at Fate specifically because Fate, the core Fate system by Evil Hat, is available for license, and probably other people have done this, but this is the first one, or the big one, actually the only one that I'm aware of directly, is that you can choose what license to license Fate Core under. You can license it under the OGL, or you can license it under a Creative Commons license that is the attribute, well, let me make sure I'm saying this exactly right. Fate Core license. The Fate Core license is licensed under the the Creative Commons license CC BY is one of the licensing options for Fate, and the CC BY. So the Creative Commons license start with CC, and then there's a dash, and then there are letters after it that give you what particular type of Creative Commons license it is. And that particular one, CC BY, it says you can copy and redistribute the material in any medium or format. You may remix, transform, and build upon the material for any purpose, even commercially. And the licensor cannot revoke these freedoms as long as you follow the terms license. And the terms license are attribution. You must give appropriate credit, provide a link to the license, and indicate if changes were made. You may do so in any reasonable manner, but not in a way that suggests the licensor endorses you or your use. And Evil Hat gives a way to what you must put in there to give appropriate credit. You know, it's just like this is written by the names of the people and whatever. Let me see. It actually says it right down here. It says, how do you attribute? This is very simple. Wherever you put your copyright, put this work is based on Fate Core System and Fate Accelerated Edition, found at faterpg.com, products of Evil Hat, LLC, developed and authored by it, lists all the people's names. And it's just a short clause, and then there you go. And that sounds pretty good to many of us. It did to many of the people on the stream. Like, well, why not just use that? Okay, originally Ryan had said that, and he made a correction here, because the Creative Commons licenses had not existed when the OGL precedes the Creative Commons licenses. So the reason why the D&D SRD was not used was not licensed by Creative Commons is simply they did not exist at the time. I think it was like not until 2 years later that the first Creative Commons stuff started happening. Now, he does remember his reason for not doing that, and he said that must have come up in a different conversation later after the Creative Commons licenses existed. And he said, well, we are trying to stop confusion by reducing ambiguity or trying to eliminate ambiguity with this license, right? And he said, the Creative Commons licenses, there are a whole bunch of them. There's a big variety of them, and you've got to figure out exactly which one you've got. And, hey, that's exactly what happened to me right now. I said, hey, Fate is licensed under a Creative Commons license. Wait a minute, which one is it? I had to go look it up. So Ryan later, they didn't decide to, there must have been a conversation about, do we move the SRD away from OGL and also license it or move forward with new stuff under the Creative Commons? And it was like, no, there are too many licenses that Creative Commons offers. They're good licenses, but there's so much variety in there that you're not sure which one you're actually looking at. And some of them are extremely open and permissive, and other ones are extremely closed. And so you've got to figure out what that code is. CC BY, there's CC, a whole bunch of other ones, and he wanted to get rid of that ambiguity. So not CC something, let's look it up, but OGL, and that's what it is. So that was his reasoning for the OGL over the Creative Commons. But what Captain Nolan is right here saying is what Bob talked about. He said that Bob said that RPGs are particularly unsuitable. This is not a direct quote, but are unsuitable for RPGs because of this all kinds of different content that are involved in a book. Because you've got the rules, you've got the mechanics, you've got stories, you've got pictures, yeah, you've got the layout. However, that's protected trade dress, I guess. But you've got all these different things that are inside this rule book, and that the OGL allows you to separate out those things, exactly like Captain Nolan is saying here. But the SRD, the Creative Commons doesn't really have that in there, so you need a different kind of instrument. But on the other hand, I said, my thinking there was, and my comment there was that, well, that displays the need for an SRD. That the SRD solves that problem. Because yes, if you have a complicated, like, okay, here's Lou's book sitting right here. If you have Thrones and Bones here, and you've got this complicated world book here that's got world stuff in it and illustrations, like we all know RPG books have, some of it's proprietary stuff, some of it's the mechanics and all of that, and you want it to license this by Creative Commons, well, what you do is you make an SRD, right? That seemed to solve that problem. That seemed to be why you would need an SRD, which he did not bring up on stream. But I was like, okay, well, I've got to make two versions of my books, just like Wizards did. I'm going to make my book that's got all of my proprietary stuff in it, as well as all the other stuff. I'll make another document. We'll call it the SRD for my RPG, and then I will license it. And then I will, just license that SRD, and I'll use it in my own book, and then other people can use it as well. So it seemed like the SRD was the way to get around that problem. We have a super chat. Doug Hatton. I want to bring it up on screen. Let me find it. So he didn't talk about the SRD in relation to Creative Commons. So Doug Hatton for $9.99. Thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here. WotC should realize third-party publishers mostly fill in gaps in material that WotC will not publish. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that was actually one of the original ideas, right? That's why there were so many adventure modules. I mean, there were a lot of adventure modules. Like, well, we don't want to publish adventure modules. We want you to buy that core book, because we did bring up the point. I remember the D20 license, and that you could not add character creation rules in there. There could be no character creation or advancement rules. That was all missing from the D20 stuff. Like, apparently there was the rule ended up being or something that there could be a like an advancement table, that table could be sitting there if you're like coming up with a new character class or something like that, that you could put that table in there, but you couldn't actually say what to do with it, because that had to be in the PHP. I remember that kind of being the rule. Now, whether that was probably the unofficial rule that was decided upon, because how could you create character classes if you couldn't just tell you how to advance them, but you could just give the table, but not what to do with the table. So yeah, I remember all of that. So that was clearly part of the plan. That and roll to win. I always say roll to win combat, but because there's another channel that's roll to win something. But roll for combat was also talking about that there's all kinds of stuff that Wizards of the Coast is never going to get around to publishing. That a smaller company can fill that gap. Absolutely. So Fate Core's CC does allow you to make some open content and withhold some. Okay, wait a minute. Let's look at this a bit more. Lou would know. Oh, right. For your stuff. Right. Because you don't have to license your stuff. Let me go back and make sure that I got this comment. So Lou is saying Fate Core's Creative Commons does allow you to make open some content and withhold some. Yeah. When you take it, you can do that. You can mix stuff in the stuff that you take it with. Yes, you can do that. I think that's a separate issue. I think that's a separate issue than the one we were addressing here. Lou is also saying, I'm looking at Cypher, IM2, Fate, and Savage Worlds. I'm looking at the same ones. I don't know anything about Cypher, but we're going to cover Cypher in on the channel soon. We've covered a lot of Fate here, and we did look at Savage Worlds. I got to go back and look at Savage Worlds more, but we're going to cover Cypher here soon. Aldevar says, instead of an SRD, you could also release, for example, a limited version of the book under CC BY. For example, like WWN has a free and deluxe edition, or text only in a full version. Right? Yeah. If there's some kind of problem with that, that seems to be the way around it. I think so. It would seem to me, though. It would seem to me. Ask him. Maybe if I get to talk to Bob, we'll ask him. So we did the copyright issue was very interesting. The copyright issue of the OGL, because Bob did address that, but he was a bit confused about it. He said that it was kind of weird because you have to copy it in order to use it. So why is it copyright? But I think that was something we got an answer to that I understood more clearly. That was the intention. The why is that license copyright by Wizards of the Coast to reduce confusion, to reduce ambiguity. So we got that answer. So there won't be multiple copies of the OGL going around and people are trying to figure out which one it is. No, it's the Wizards OGL. It's not this. There's just that. So that's why. And then I thought the geographic, he did bring up the geographic focus, which is why I asked here. And I thought that was also an extremely useful answer that Ryan provided on why there was no geographic focus given to the scope of the geographic jurisdiction given to the scope of the OGL. So those were the issues that I came up with that I wanted to talk about with regards to Bob's interview. So I guess we kind of basically got through that. So fascinating, I think. What else do we need to say? Cypher is really role-playing heavy and great as a player. I personally don't like it because the GM doesn't roll dice. I remember that. Because I watched like a 5-minute primer or something on Cypher. So it's all player facing. I want to talk about that in a stream, or maybe not a stream, maybe just a video. But I want to talk about that on the channel about the advantages of attacking versus a static number, or doing any kind of action, but like attacking versus a static number versus active attack and defense rolls, and then versus like the player rolls all of the dice. So it would be like instead, active attack roll against a passive number, active attack, active defense, or just active defense. Those are your options. And how they change things, gameplay, the feel of the game, which one's better for what purpose. Of course, there's not an objective answer to which one's better, but there's trade-offs with each one. So what do you do? I think that's an interesting topic. We'll have to get into that more. So it's good. I didn't have one that was all the play. I don't think I've studied any one that is the players roll the dice. So the Cypher would be the first one there. Okay. Well, we did hit, let me find out I was keeping track of, 500. I believe that 533 people was our record there. Oh, I should turn on. We're as we're chilling out here. Our there. Chill out here. That with 533 people, is that worth a shot? Is that worth a shot? And I mean shot of tequila. Oh, I keep taking down my stuff. Lou says Cypher is interesting. I too am a forever GM that loves my dice. But I'm checking in on that. Yeah, because I've seen people who don't like that because, when you say the player rolls all of the dice, well, in a certain sense, in the broad sense, the game master is a player as well. And so the game master probably likes rolling dice as well. So if the players, as in not the GM, roll all the dice, then that's taken care of. Then that takes some fun out of the game master. That's one of the trade-offs. I think that has to be thought of. I think that absolutely does. So, yep. Chill music. Yep. I tell you what, let's do this. Yeah. Trixer says we're looking at cards too. The Nose Plays is, talks about cards as well. I'm writing a system right now that uses cards instead of dice. I know everyone loves dice, but there are really cool playing card decks out there. There are. Nope. Lou meant me dice. Me dice. Me loves me dice. All right. Well, I tell you what, I think we should celebrate here. Now, we do have a special way that we end the wind down. This was a bizarre wind down because this is the first wind down that I've ever done with more than just me. Ordinarily, it's just me on the wind down. I do want to make the wind down talking about topics. We also review our day during the wind down. Typically, this week has been completely different than all other weeks, but kind of review our day, hold ourselves accountable, and then talk about some kind of geek-related topic. So, oh, hey, Grimhild, welcome. So that's typically what we do, but we do have a special way of ending the stream, which is with an animated audiobook. If you have not been here for the end of a wind down, you're in for a treat. So I tell you what, we will conclude this with a tequila shot. So I'll do this. This is to all of you guys. We got 264 people right here. So, oh, hey, Xmas7. Hey, Xmas7. Good to see you. So this is to conclude this. Fantastic stream, everybody. Fantastic. This is to you. Record-breaking. Another record-breaking stream. I've had like 4 of those this week. Black Hack. Oh, does it? Did I forget that? We did look at Black Hack. And I forgot that. We did look at Black Hack. And there was a lot that I liked about Black Hack. I want to go back and review that RPG because there are some elements of that I really liked. I forgot that the players roll all of the dice in that. Well, no, the players roll the dice also in like Mork Borg, don't they? And so Vast Grim. So actually, we probably have looked at more like that. We probably have. Yes, growing the live stream. Black Hack, I do want to look more about. Yep, growing the live stream. Bottoms up, everybody, yes. Okay, so if you are in the Geekverse and you have children, or if you have children or nieces or nephews or cousins or whoever it is that you want to get involved in fantasy and medieval fantasy, well, I wrote a book called Goodnight Sword that I turned into an animated audiobook. Goodnight Sword is obviously a takeoff of Goodnight Moon, and you can see that I have lots of like rabbit plushes over here, and also rabbit action figures, the prototypes. All these are prototypes for the stuff that we're working on. But the first book that I put out, first story, which is on YouTube, the Goodnight Sword audiobook is on YouTube, and you can also pick up a PDF. Well, you can pick up a PDF, but the ebook on ravenkeep.net. If you know of anyone who you think would be you'd be interested in getting into fantasy through Goodnight Sword, if I had kids, I'd want to read them Goodnight Sword. So, because it's the wind down and we're always here in the evenings, I like to conclude with the book of Goodnight Sword. So I'm going to play that right here. Here it is.
Goodnight
It was our
Sword,
first attempt at animating something.
written by E.H.
So this is Goodnight Sword and the world of Tales of
Illustrated by
Ravivania,
Adam
which is
and
one of the
Fox.
worlds that we're building here on the channel.
Narrated
That
by
and also a
Brianna
world
De
about the
Silva.
fall of Lucifer. So this is
Part
one of
the
them.
Tales of
Good night,
Ravivania.
everybody. I leave you with Goodnight Sword.
Goodnight Sword. Goodnight Gourd. Goodnight guards who keep us all safe. Goodnight dagger. And the iron hauberk. Goodnight cheese. Goodnight keys. Goodnight elm. And goodnight helm. Goodnight squire. And goodnight liar. Goodnight shield. And good night to the lance only the gallant wield. Good night banner. And good night jewel. Good night gruel. Good night nights. And good night to the old soldier who says time's been cruel. Good night, maiden fair, whose favor I bear. Good night, rabbits everywhere.